Oh,
hole for the redwood.
Mark's on the beach now.
I'm speaking at the.
Who's on the, oh,
All right, that'll work.
he took your background, man.
Yeah. So he's
Got wine shirt on.
yeah, he's renting my condo down at the place I was last 2 weeks.
That's right.
So do we have to turn these off when we're not speaking,
You can just,
or just not talk?
just leave those off. If you're
I
on
don't
Zoom.
have it on here, I'll just turn that,
Yeah, then you're just normal, just
and
act.
I'll hear them and see that, and it'll be
You'll
fine.
hear everybody on the speaker up there, and everybody will hear you through your microphone. All right. Well. No, but I can hear you over there.
It's your, or it's your mic, like the literal black mic. They're off. Oh, they are? Yeah, I would turn those
Just,
on.
yeah, unmute your mic.
Yeah, I would not use,
Don't use anything else.
don't
Just
use
that
anything
thing.
else.
This one?
Yep.
Just the
Okay.
mic, yeah.
We're on the air.
I've got them. I've got them.
All right, we ready to roll? Oh, okay, go ahead, Kat.
Yep.
So many notes,
What's that?
so many notes.
I think we're waiting for Alderwoman Hardison.
Yeah, no, Kathy's ready to go. We'll just move along.
We're good.
Okay, so welcome everyone to this evening's committee of the whole meeting. Kathy, can you give us a roll call, please? Well, you know what? Why don't we just start with the pledge? We'll all stand and do the pledge.
Okay.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Lay a roll call on us, please.
Join the meeting.
Okay.
Joanne has joined the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Saban,
Present.
Schreiber,
Here.
Bergbauer,
Here.
Galogly,
Here.
Deskin,
Here.
Lobes, Bartleson,
Here.
and Peretta.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, very good. I see Bill Carroll is in the house to lead us for prayer, so please.
Let's pray. Dear God, tonight I just ask for comfort. I ask for comfort for those who are sick. I ask for comfort for those who have lost loved ones during this time. And Lord, I ask for comfort for those who are at home, Lord, that they would follow the laws until it's time to change. And Lord, that we'd have peace right now. We ask for peace for our city. We ask for strength and endurance for our first responders. And Lord, we thank you for all the councilmen, councilwomen, and the public servants, Lord, who are serving through this time, this very, very strange and different time. Lord, your blessing upon Lockport, your blessing upon the people, and we thank you so much. In your name, amen.
Amen. All right.
Two more.
Okay, very good. All right, everybody. Look, a couple things I want to say before we get started. Obviously these Zoom meetings are tricky, and I feel like we need to set a couple rules up in place that'll, I think, help us run our meetings a little bit better. What I'd like to do is, as we speak as council members, instead of speaking on top of one another, which seems to be a problem with Zoom, we're just going to speak one at a time. If you have a point that you want to address that one of the other council members make, instead of doing it at that moment, just write it down. We'll get to everyone, and we can go through that process as many times as we need to. But I would rather have a meeting where we're not talking on top of one another. So I think this will help us. So we're going to do one at a time speaking tonight for whatever topic we are on. Thank you. All right. So let me ask a question. Do we have the sprinkler alarm grant request folks? Are they actually here tonight?
No.
Okay. And then, well, then what I'd like to do is let's go ahead and move up let's go ahead and move up our PZ1 to the beginning. Because I have people sitting here, and instead of making them wait, let's just start that. So who's going to take PZ1 to open this up?
I will.
Okay. But before we start, I want to say just a couple things. So we're going to talk about the Redwood development first here on the agenda. Just for folks, I know everybody in this room here knows, and the people that are here tonight, I've spoken to them in the past, most of them, not all of them. But just so everybody understands how this process works and where we're at today. So right now, we are at a concept plan stage in this. This is where a developer comes and there's a piece of property that's currently zoned for this use, and so they're coming here to present. This has been kind of out there for a while now, because before this whole COVID-19 thing, came upon us, they had first came out and went to the Planning and Zoning Committee, which are members of the community who've been appointed by myself and approved by the council. We usually pick people who have, good knowledge and background in building and developing. So they, hear it first. They give a recommendation to the council. Redwood had also done their own meeting with citizens who were going to be potentially their immediate neighbors, and so that was a meeting they had hosted on their own. But this is now the first time the city council will have heard this. We've tried to do, just FYI, Redwood did, at my request, postpone this meeting. It was supposed to happen a couple weeks ago, but at my request, they held off so that I had a chance to meet with a number of residents. And we did through Zoom and through face-to-face meetings. So we've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of folks. So I thank you, Redwood, for being patient and allowing that to happen. But now we're at a concept stage. So tonight, this is kind of our brainstorming session after Redwood puts their proposal onto the table. And then as a council, this is our first opportunity to, ask questions, share citizen concerns, share our own concerns, and listen to the public in front of the council. So just going to give everybody a little heads up on how the process works. There'll be no votes today. Whatever we discuss then goes to a meeting 2 weeks from now, and that is a meeting where we will either vote to approve a concept or not. Even if you vote to approve a concept, that still means that there's a whole bunch of, things that have to be met, but it gives a petitioner a reasonable assurance that if they can meet all the concerns that have been raised, that, there's a good chance that it could happen. But it's not definite, so just trying to give everybody an understanding of the process. So thank you for hearing that. Lance, why don't you go ahead and talk?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I know that my report is somewhat lengthy, but just given the interest in the project, I will probably go through it in a fair amount of detail so that people at home or who are watching on the internet are able to hear the different pieces that we have in the report. So with that, Kelly McIver of Redwood USA, who is also on the Zoom meeting tonight as the applicant, is seeking approval of a concept plan for Redwood, which is a 30-acre, 159-unit, single-story residential rental neighborhood for the property generally located west of Broken Arrow and east of Lago Vista, connecting to Farrell Road at Broken Arrow Drive. Although the project narrative provided by the petitioner uses the word apartment as a descriptor of the development, from the city's zoning perspective, these units are each considered to be a single-family dwelling unit and not an apartment building that is traditionally a multi-story structure. I know that that's one thing that has been out in the public, that this is a multi-story building. It's a single-story structure. The subject property was previously known as Copperstone, which was developed by Monticello Homes in 2004 with an approved annexation agreement, which was brought forward through resolution number 04207. Concurrently with and pursuant to the approval of the annexation agreement, the preliminary plat and plan was approved, but the final plat and plan was not submitted and development did not take place. New ownership of the property has come forth with a new proposal, a concept plan known as Redwood, a residential development that includes single-story attached unit, single-family rental homes. Since the approval of the annexation agreement and preliminary plan, the surrounding neighborhood of the development site has been changed from the date of the original Copperstone plan. including changes to the components of the city's residential design guidelines and PUD requirements for the subdivision development. The concept plan proposed by Redwood was considered by the Plan and Zoning Commission at their regularly scheduled meeting on March 10th, 2020, which occurred prior to COVID-19 shelter-in restrictions. Although the city's zoning code and the development code do not require notification of surrounding property owners or a public hearing on a concept plan, city staff treated and handled the proposed concept plan as an item being reviewed similarly to a rezoning or a special use by notifying the surrounding property owners. Over 60 people from adjacent neighborhoods and properties attended the meeting and were given the opportunity to state on the record their support or objections to the proposed project. Of those who appeared, 7 provided verbal comments directly to the commission. So on your screen, you see the site plan that is being presented for approval as a concept plan tonight. A couple components of this site plan and some of the other subsequent pieces of the project. You know, we talk a lot about our design guidelines and how those influence the way in which projects are laid out and the way in which we start to work with the applicants. You know, one of the things that we ask for in our design guidelines are short block lengths. They make for walkable environments. We had a conversation a while back about Oak Creek and the length of their blocks. You know, this is something that we look to advocate for in many of our projects. The entrance located in that red triangle down in the lower right-hand corner is the access off of Broken Arrow Drive. We have also asked for future connections, both north and south, out of the development. In case future development ever happens north and south of this site, that there are internal connections so that we don't.
They're telling me there's no sound coming in.
No sound online?
Hey, Ben.
Who said that? We can hear it.
Ben, can you turn the TV up in the conference room?
We can't hear it.
Out there, they can't.
Oh, it's probably the TV's not turned the volume.
Yeah, sound is going everywhere else. We're okay.
Pardon us for the delay. We just want to make sure that people in some adjacent rooms can actually hear what's going on, so just give us a minute. Thanks.
Good? Need a mic?
Everybody can hear now? What if I'm talking? I'm talking. Can everybody hear me in the other room? Is that good? Okay.
Better?
Sorry about that. We had a technical issue in the conference room. So back to what I was talking about, the orientation to the site plan. The red arrow in the lower right-hand corner shows the location of the main entrance into the development. The orangish arrows to the north and the south show a connection that would occur in the future if those properties were ever developed, so that we don't run into similar issues that we have on the Broken Arrow side, where there's no internal connections to other developments to connect to Farrell. There is a emergency access that's shown as the yellow arrow to the north on Farrell. That right now is shown as an emergency access for fire equipment only. The blue dots that just showed up show where the retention ponds are currently. We'll talk about the drainage in a little bit. The green square that just showed up is where their Central Park is located. So this would be an open space that the residents would have the opportunity to use as a part of their public environment. And then the orange lines that showed up is a trail that they have integrated into the overall neighborhood. So this would take residents around the entire property and connect everybody into that Central Park environment that they've created. Final alignment of this trail will occur as we continue to go through the process. This is not the final location for where the trail occurs, because I know that there have been a number of comments both from Lago Vista but also the property owner to the south about the relationship of that trail to their property. So we're sensitive to that, and we want to make sure that They are still there for the resident enjoyment that live here, but we recognize that this is not showing the final locations where they would be. Architecturally, these are the current elevations that Redwood has proposed for the project. Architecture is not a requirement during the concept plan process. However, we felt it would be good to at least show a representation of what the project will be from an architectural standpoint. We will look to have these conform to our residential design guidelines to the degree possible, and make sure with colors, quality materials, and a bunch of those types of things are integrated into it. These are isometric floor plans of their different units. Roughly between 1,300 square feet, I think, to 1,600 square feet. All of them have attached garages, organized in different ways. Some of the units have a rear-loaded garage, so meaning the garage is on the back side of the house, accessed off of an alley. Some of them are front-loaded, and others are kind of side-loaded. So there's a variety of different types in the way in which those garages express themselves on the facade. To date, we have had a series of different public interaction meetings that the mayor alluded to in his introduction. We had 3 in-person meetings, one on this should say May, my apologies. One on May 6th at 6, one on May 13th, and another on May 13th. 2 Zoom calls with residents, one on May 13th at 9 a.m. and one on May 13th at 3 p.m. We did have 21 residents email commentary into the planning@lockport.org email address. Those emails are in your packet tonight for your information. So from here, we'll go back into the staff report. We recognize that there were have been a series of different issues that have been brought up by the neighbors, the horse farm to the south, the neighbors to the north, Lago Vista, Broken Arrow. So, as we've gotten all of this information or all of these comments, we've gone through a pretty exhaustive process of trying to give everybody factual information, or as much factual information as we can provide for your information as a part of your review and analysis. So there are 8 different topics that we've kind of divided everything into, all the comments and everything that we've heard. So I'll kind of go through some of that research as we go through this. So under process, we've heard both at the Plan and Zoning Commission meeting and in the online comments that the project is being forced on the residents. Similar to all the properties throughout the city, an owner or someone acting on behalf of the owner, like a developer, has the right to file a concept plan to be reviewed and heard by the PZC for a recommendation, and then this recommendation is forwarded to the City Council, which can accept or reject the concept plan. Pursuant to the 2004 annexation agreement already in place for the development site, the property is already zoned and approved for this type of use for 140 residential units given to the previous developer looking to build 4-unit buildings. Except for the increase in resident units, what Redwood is proposing is similar to the preliminary development plan that was approved for the prior property owner. The annexation agreement binding to the owner and the city on the development of the property, as a standard for all agreements, lasts for 20 years and has regulations related to what is and what is not allowed to occur on the property, as well as the required improvements associated with Farrell Road and the Broken Arrow drainage issues. The current process of concept, preliminary, and final plan reviews is being followed because of the request for 159 units, which is greater than the approved 140 units as presented in the approved preliminary plan pursuant to the annexation agreement. If the applicant chose to submit a project with 140 units and a few other minor changes based on the annexation agreement, they have the right to directly submit a final development plan, which the city would be legally obligated to approve as long as it is in substantial conformance with the already approved preliminary plan. If the concept plan with the increase in number of units is approved, they may ask to combine preliminary final in one step this fall, which is acceptable and a common practice if the quality of the submittal meets our requirements, including the other basic requirements related to Farrell Road and the drainage issues. Water pressure and volume. There was a question about whether the water system could handle adding this many homes. Upon review by the city's engineering and water system staff, the system had previously included this property in its overall design capacities and will have no issue serving the property and number of units with the expected pressure and volume. In addition, the annexation agreement for this development includes the city's guarantee and obligation to provide adequate water and sewage treatment for this development. Under drainage, there were questions related to whether this development would make the drainage issues currently being experienced by Broken Arrow and Lago Vista and the adjoining neighbors to the north worse. The current annexation agreement for the property includes requirements for the installation of utilities that will relieve the issues in the pond across Farrell Road in Broken Arrow. In addition, the current concept plan shows 2 ponds in the northwest and southwest corners of the development, which could relieve drainage issues in Lago Vista. In a concept plan phase of a project, detailed stormwater designs are not required. However, the applicant has studied the issue and has worked with city staff to identify big-picture approaches to resolving both problems. Detailed engineering studies and calculations will occur during the preliminary plan, final plan phase that will add more details to the solutions. The applicant has committed to finding the appropriate solution to the extent they are able to on the development property. Rentals in the R2 zoning district. Comments have been made that this high quantity of rental units or rentals themselves should not be allowed in the area. The city code, as is standard in most municipal codes, does not preclude a single-family home from being rented or leased with a traditional leasehold or a rental agreement. The zoning code addresses the use of the land, not the method in which payments are made for the occupancy and use of the residential home. That applies whether it is a single-family neighborhood with homes that could be rented or even developed as 2 units as rentals, or a multifamily district with single or multi-story buildings. It follows that rentals are allowed on all units or any portion thereof. Subsidized housing. Numerous comments have been made at the meetings and social media regarding these residential units being rented through subsidized housing, commonly known as Section 8 voucher or another government subsidized program. Across the 12,000 unit portfolio of Redwoods Holdings, they have never accepted a Section 8 or government subsidized voucher. For the Redwoods Lockport proposal, Redwood and the city are working on language to be included in their agreement that by agreement, the dwelling units will be rented or leased at fair market rental rates as determined by the owner from time to time for housing of this type in this general geographic area. They are also required to comply with all applicable local, state, and federal fair housing laws. In addition, to the extent permitted by federal, state, and local law, the rental of the units within the project would not be rented at subsidized rates or pursuant to programs offered by any governmental agency for subsidized housing. This language is not finalized, but should give you a sense for the direction of our discussions with the developer. It would not be required to be finalized until the final plan phase. School capacity. A resident was concerned that the school district would become overcrowded if this development is approved. Based on the information provided by the district, the Fairmont School District currently has an enrollment of 342 students with a comfortable capacity of 500 and a maximum capacity of 700. Given the anticipated 18 children coming from this development, the district's evaluation of the proposal and comments from the applicant, and based on Redwood's portfolio-wide average of plus or minus 11 students per 100 units, there is sufficient capacity expected at the school. Redwood's average is consistent across numerous studies from the country and consistent in general with findings from the 2018 American Housing Survey. Is it the same for Lockport? Maybe, but even if it was off by a factor of 2 or 3, there is still sufficient capacity in the schools for the kids. Property values. Residents, specifically those in the Broken Arrow and Lago Vista, are concerned about property values. Many of these concerns are anecdotal. There are a number of studies, albeit focused around the early to mid-2000s during the housing boom, when objections like these were at their highest, that have been done surrounding this issue. Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, the National Association of Home Builders, MIT Center for Real Estate, the National Association for Realtors, the Center for Urban Land Economics Research in Madison, Wisconsin, the Family Housing Fund in Minneapolis, Wayne State University in Detroit, the Innovative Housing Institute, and the Brookings Institute have all produced studies and have come to conclusions that rental neighborhoods, even some low income, adjacent to single-family detached home neighborhoods do not reduce home values and, in some cases, actually raise them if the neighborhood maintenance is kept at a high level. Are there localized situations that can be different? Yes, but across the scope of these studies, those are the conclusions. It is also important to differentiate studies that are specific to converted single-family detached homes within an existing neighborhood, such as if an existing Broken Arrow home turns into a rental, to complete rental neighborhoods. Studies have shown that there is an impact in those situations. I also want to mention that we were provided a report by a community in Michigan that has a Redwood community in it. Redwood did not fund nor participate in the study outside of just simply responding to some questions because one of the sample projects was their apartment community. The city funded this project completely separately from anything that had to do with the development to identify property value increases or decreases based on adjacency to apartments. And it found findings very consistent with all the other studies that I mentioned earlier. Under traffic, numerous comments have been made at meetings and online social media related to the congestion at Broken Arrow Drive, access onto Farrell Road. Staff recognizes that the design of the intersection and capacity studies of the roadway are important components of the development as it progresses through the approval process. Detailed traffic studies are not required during the concept plan phase, but will be required during the final plan phase of the approval process. Given the current executive orders, our engineering staff and the applicant are identifying a process based on best practices and allowing for modifications if the plans continue into the final plan phase. Under a recommendation by a vote of 6-0, the Plan and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the following. A motion to recommend the approval of the concept plan and for tonight's meeting, Resolution 20-061 for an attached residential single-family rental neighborhood subject to the following conditions. The applicant acknowledges that staff has completed a general review only of the concept plan and that a more detailed review will occur with submission of a preliminary development plan. Staff comments at this time are general, intended to outline steps necessary if the project moves forward and to provide guidance and considerations for future submittals. An amended annexation agreement shall be submitted with submission of a preliminary final development plan application to address uses, general design standards, as well as such other details and obligations necessary for the development of the property as a residential development. Comments as identified in the development engineering consultant review letters related to the plan review will need to be addressed at the time of the PUD process and plan review. Concept plan approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Approval of a concept plan provides the applicant reasonable assurances to move forward with submission of a preliminary development plan. The preliminary and final development plan shall be in general conformance with the approved concept plan. That concludes my report.
Okay. Lance, thank you. I appreciate it. You put a lot of time in that.
Mr. Mayor, can I have one clarification question about the report? I think I might have missed something. Can I just get one
Yes, sure.
clarification?
Please.
Sure. Lance, so I just want to be sure, we're going to go from concept to preliminary and final in one step when they submit this in the fall?
That is certainly something that the city council can direct us to do.
Okay.
If I may interject with my, with the city code. Blackford City Code, I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, can you hear me? The Blackford City Code, the zoning code allows for the preliminary and final to be submitted as one. It's authorized if it turns out that the nature and the scope of the proposed subdivision does not require a separate preliminary and final, especially if the concept plan was submitted in such detail that the applicant could combine both the preliminary site plan into one as a final. It has been done in the past, so this is not a precedent or a change of the typical practice. So it has been done, so it is allowed by the city code.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right. So just a couple things. What we'll do is just say a few words. We'll listen to, we have some resident cards here that they want to speak. And then after that, we'll have the council share their thoughts, concerns, and of course, give the petitioner opportunity to talk a little bit. Just a couple things, too, that I just want to reiterate for folks before they come up, is that, and also just a note to, Kelly, the petitioner, there's a lot of, buzz and anxiety over this project because, when it was first proposed in 2004, it was owner occupied. And so this is an owner occupied little neck of the woods in Lockport. And so people do, get concerned about it. So that's why I think there's certainly so much anxiety about it. So a lot of the questions, of course, we'll hear from that side of it. And then also maybe the density as well. But just a couple clarifications too. Like I had a letter here today from the Petersons. They had asked about, why can't this just be left open fields? We like the wildlife and such. And just to reiterate that the property has been zoned and, since 2004. It's not an unincorporated parcel that the city has the ability to just say no and leave it empty. It is inside the city with zoning and property rights, and so that's why we're having this conversation. It's not that we're seeking a development such as this, but it is what it is because somebody owns the property and it's annexed and it's zoned. And so I just want to be clear that, leaving it empty is not really an option. It's going to be developed one day, regardless. So whether it's Redwood or another developer, I just want to be clear about that part of this. So that said, why don't we have some of our residents come up. Sandy, your first card on the top of the pile. Sandy, in the other room? Okay.
What's the name?
Sandy Malinsky. Molesky.
Sandy?
Hi.
Sandy, how are you?
How are you guys?
Good.
I am sorry, we couldn't hear very well out there. The speakers don't work in the conference room at all, so we're all standing in the hallway. I don't think any of us heard what the attorney had said and what was proposed about. It sounded like maybe you guys were looking to fast track and skip a process. Could you guys repeat that for all of us?
They're still not going to hear, though.
I mean, if we open this door, maybe the people in the hallway can hear. This is a very difficult way to have a meeting and a very difficult time to have a meeting because people can't hear it.
Can anyone hear me? Ben, the administrator. I think the question that came up was because of the entitlements that are already in place, technically they can come back to final now with the current count of 140 units. They're asking for 159 at the concept stage. They can come back in the fall as long as their submittal can be combined. The preliminary final can be combined into one step if it meets all of our requirements and meets the recommendations the planning and zoning put forth and the staff approves the engineering for the submittal, right? Because right now we don't have a whole lot of detail, and so our preliminary step is about 95% of what's required to build, and the final is 100% of what's required to build. So we have to make sure we get a good submittal. Our code does allow for the combination of those two things. Technically, we usually have two steps. We have preliminary and we have final. Because this process has been approved back in 2004, again, they could move forward with final tomorrow, with the original approval, but because of what they're asking for, we've asked them to do a concept, have this hearing, have all these additional comments and reviews, but they do have the ability to combine the preliminary final into one final step, basically, in the fall or whenever they want.
So in other words, if because of the concept plan, which is not normal, they've gone through this extra process, but if they were only asking for 140 units, they could have gone straight to final regardless. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's, if I may also add, that's correct, but in addition, a typical or general applicant for a concept plan, once the concept plan is approved, can request for the preliminary and final plans to be combined, and it has been done in the past. It's, one thing that the review process would look at is if the preliminary and final or the concept is also very close in detail, that it doesn't require separate review. So it's actually allowed by the city code, and it's actually authorized by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Typically, in practice, what would happen is the Director of Community and Economic Development, such as Lance Thies, would say, this is a subdivision, they've given us quite detail in concept plan, and it's not far removed from the preliminary plan that was approved by the annexation agreement, that there's no necessity of separating the preliminary and final. So it's not needed for separate review, and that's when that would come into play. And like I said, it's been done in prior applications and prior cases.
Sure.
Okay. So just to reiterate, so that I make sure I understand, it sounds like if this is approved currently in the concept phase, we could actually skip one of the votes down the road and it could go straight to development. Is that what I'm understanding in short?
No, the preliminary final plan still goes back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which also hears that plan, and then it comes back to this committee of the whole for discussion and ultimate vote by the city council. It does not go straight into getting the building permit and development.
But we skip one vote, correct? It goes from concept to the proposal for
Yes,
combining.
it does skip one process, which has been done in prior cases and prior development. And in this case, since the preliminary was already approved in the annexation agreement, the increase in the unit doesn't necessitate having the review be separated.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. We couldn't understand what was being said.
Hey, Sandy, just before you start, we do, speaking time is 5 minutes, so do your best to get it in. I know we've talked a number of times, but you can always, if you don't feel like you get everything in, anybody who has to speak, you know how to get a hold of me, and we're going to have another meeting anyway, so, but we try to limit everything to 5, so.
Okay, will do. Thank you. Do you need me to state my name and
Sure, that would be helpful, thank you.
Okay, my name is Sandy Molesky. Last name is Moleski. I am the owner of the property to the south of the Redwood proposed development, the Legacy Ranch. So a couple things. One, I do think this is a very difficult time to be having these meetings, and I think it's even being here in person, and I know that there are a number of us in the hall and in the room under the social distance guidelines. It's just very difficult. We already have had to leave the conference room twice because we couldn't hear what was being said. We missed the entire first 5 to 10 minutes of Lance's proposal. So those of us who are maybe most interested in the project and feel comfortable enough to leave our homes during this time and come here weren't even able to hear what was being discussed. So I think this is a very difficult time to do this, and I know that that's not Redwood's fault. I know that's not the city's fault, but I do think some consideration should be given to the citizens of Lockport and those that have property rights here. I do think it creates more anxiety, more mental health concerns for individuals that are already maybe struggling. I know I've talked to a number of individuals in Lago Vista who wish that they could be here. They've sent letters or they've called, but they don't feel like they've been able to obtain maybe all the information because they're not Zoom friendly. They don't understand how to use those tools, and they don't feel that comfortably they could come and be here in person because of the pandemic. So I think to suggest that maybe we would, for lack of a better term, fast track this and skip a step in the process, I think is just really a disservice to the community to think that that would be appropriate for a situation maybe that is very contested in the community and maybe people don't feel as comfortable with it. So I think the longer time that we have to get the facts out there and get people to understand what's being proposed, I think would be in the best interest of the future of Lockport as well as the citizens and the council. So I would request that doesn't happen. If there's a possibility of continuing the regular transition of this in hopes that the pandemic requirements would lift and people would feel more comfortable to come out of their homes, I think that would really be preferable to the community. So that's my first point. I just don't think adding additional time crunch to this is what anybody is hoping for. I think there's a few items, and I know that you've addressed many of them, and I appreciate that, and certainly Lance and Steve, I appreciate the willingness to talk to the community and get information out there. I do think that there is a lot of misinformation and confused information due to the fact that there have been a number of different times that at different meetings, different things have been discussed. And I think, a lot of it has to do with, we're in the concept phase and we're in the proposal stage, but I think one of the questions that I think would all like to get answered is the price point for these units. I know I've heard everything, and I have attended every meeting that Redwood's presented at. I've heard anything from $1,400 to $2,200. The latest I've heard is $2,100, but I'm not sure really what that price point is. I had also thought that these were just 2-bedroom units, and then I'd also heard that maybe there were some 3-bedroom units proposed. No? Okay, good. So there are just some things I think that maybe we're not sure about, and I've just heard a lot of different numbers and things thrown around, so I think that's a concern that we want to get identified. My newest concern, and this has come up in the last week, I just built the ranch in the past year, and we, although we are unincorporated, and I know that's been a point of contention for many of the individuals on the council, but I do pay taxes in Lockport. I am on the city water and sewer line because my property did allow for an annexation of that, so we provide the sewer line and the water line all the way down to Lago Vista. So I do pay taxes for city and water. So I do care about the city structure, and I do take pride in what Lockport is and what we provide to our residents and our businesses. This past week, on 2 different occasions during the rain, not only Sunday all day, but the previous week, with our brand new plumbing that we just tapped into the city sewers, we can't flush our toilets at the ranch because the water can't be held in the sewer system. I know that I'm not alone in this. I know it's not our personal issue. I've looked into it. I know that there are at least 15 others that even in the last 2 days have posted on social media are having the same issue. The issue appears to be south of Division and west of Farrell Road, which is right where we fall and also right where the Redwood development would fall. I have real concerns that if the current sewer system can't hold what is being pushed through it now, that adding 160 units with 320 toilets, plus a kitchen, plus laundry, there is just no way these sewers are equipped to handle what's being proposed. And I'm concerned with what that means. So I think one of my requests, if this is something that the city council wants to consider, is that we really need to do a rehaul of all of the sewer systems in that area because it can't handle what we're putting through it now, let alone something of this magnitude. So something to think about that I know hasn't been addressed yet. And this, like I said, just came up because we've had trouble on 2 different occasions in the last 2 weeks. I think also, I know there was discussion about, in the packet about the fact that, although these are rental units, they're not apartments, quote unquote. I think that's a hard pill to swallow because the marketing that Redwood puts out there, their big signage, all of the verbiage, everything that it says Redwood Apartment Community. And in big letters, it says apartments. So I would ask perhaps that Redwood, if they move forward, would consider changing that marketing and changing that sign so at the front of the entrance, it doesn't say apartments in big letters because although it's been argued by a number of people that these aren't quote unquote apartments, that's what Redwood calls them and that's what they're marketing to. So I think we have to understand that that's what they want us to call them and that's what they are. I also am very concerned with the single entrance and exit. And as this has been ad nauseum discussed, but we are in a world right now where all kinds of things happen that are unexpected. We have accidents and we have live shooters. Let's assume, and this is the worst case scenario, but unfortunately it happens, what if a live shooter came into the community, blocked the exit, and no one can get out? Especially if we're putting, which we all have, talked about and wanted to put up fencing around it, all these people are held captive in a space and they can't get out of the facility. These are real issues, and I know that sounds like far-fetched and crazy, but we know this happens in movie theaters, we know it happens in schools. There's got to be a second way for people to get out of this community if there's an emergency. If that exit is blocked, there has to be something else to think about. The traffic...
Point of inquiry, Mayor, point of order.
Yes?
Have we gone beyond 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5. If you can, you're making fine points, Sandy, so I don't want to,
well, I think my first few minutes was asking you guys to repeat what you'd said, so I would hope that wouldn't count into my time.
And that's why I haven't,
Thank you.
stopped it, so.
So that's that, and then also, the other thing I would ask, and then I'll wrap it up, is, you know, I know we've been told a number of times that 70% of the population of the Redwood apartments in general are not student-producing units, but what I would like to see, and I don't know that anybody's seen it, and certainly I haven't, is what is the highest percentage of students per resident that they have in any of their buildings. Statistics can tell us anything we want to hear, and I think unless we see what the absolute largest percentage of students are that could come out of there, I don't think anybody can argue that the schools can handle it, whether it's Lockport Township, whether it's Fairmont, until we know what the highest number potentially could be there, and what, you know, if we're going to take that, you know, Redwood's word for it, I think that's fine, but I think I would like to know what that highest number is, and I think the citizens would like to know too, because they're concerned with the overcrowding of the schools. And I know, you know, we've been told that the schools have plenty of room, and I understand that for Fairmont that's the case. However, anybody that I've talked to that's either attended Lockport Township or is or have students there currently indicate that it is well overcrowded. And so, I'll let the professionals discuss that, but I would like to at least get an idea of what the maximum number of students could be, because we do have a lot of traffic going to and from the high school, and I do think there's a safety concern. And not only are we having all the residents like we would in any development, we have all the residents there, but when you're talking about short-term leases, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, you're talking about every single month large trucks coming in and out of that facility and going down Farrell Road, and that's a different traffic study than if you just have people that come in and live for a number of years. And I know Redwood has indicated that their average resident stays for 3 years, but they also have 3, 6, and 1 year leases, and I do think that that's a concern, and that's something that isn't part of the traffic study currently, and something that should be taken into account.
Okay.
Okay?
Sandy, thank you for your time, appreciate it. All right, well, I think, Kelly, do you want to address any of these points as we go, or would you rather just take notes and address them at the end?
I can do whatever works best for the committee. You let me know what works for you guys.
Okay, well, I'm taking pretty good notes, so why don't we just let everyone speak, and then we can go back through it, so, okay, very good.
Okay.
Next person is Susan Long. Susan Long. Hello, Susan.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Susan Long. I've been a
Susan, if I can just do just a couple things to help us. So if we do try to keep it to 5, I know I'm kind of soft.
I'm gonna take 5.
I'm kind of soft when it comes to that, though. So, but if you've, it's best, and for everyone, if there's a point that's been made, say for instance, like, you know, the flooding or the sewers, perfectly fine point to make, that we don't necessarily need to repeat it, right? Because we got it. And so if you get new points, that's great. That just helps us, you know, keep things
I don't think I need
tight.
to make a new point. My big concern is having the one entrance, one exit out of Broken Arrow subdivision, and then with this entrance being right across the street, I'm just afraid that it's going to be a problem. There's already has been a problem. The traffic has increased on Farrell Road greatly since we've moved in, obviously. But I just think it's going to become more of a problem and lower our property values, which is my big concern. That's all I really have to say.
All right, thank you, Susan. Appreciate you coming out. All right, Mr. Wilkins. John, if you could just state your name and.
My name's John Wilkins, Broken Arrow subdivision. I got a question. As far as previous zoning, 2004, it was set up for individual owner-based housing. And now, are we committed? Do we have to let them have it as rental? Is it a business as renters? Is that same consideration, or do we make?
Right. Lance, you probably can answer that better than.
So every residential zoning district allows rentals. So, you know, we can't discriminate against the way in which somebody lives in a house. What we do control is the land use. So the volume of the buildings, the setbacks, the height of the buildings, those different types of things are what are basically managed within the zoning
So
code.
if somebody's going through other subdivisions, bought up 3 houses, business, and decide to rent them out, they may do that.
There are probably a couple in Broken Arrow right now that are rented, and I know that there are in the
Are
townhome
there
section.
any business fees attached to that?
For a residential rental, no.
Yeah, as far as business doing it?
We are actually in the process, John, of instituting a couple things. Because rental houses throughout the city, you know, it's fine, people are allowed to do it. The problem, of course, is when you have somebody who's not managing it very well.
There's a couple instances of that too around town.
Right, so what we're in.
A lot of people's concern.
It is, and it is a concern for like these single-family homes that are throughout the city. So we are actually in the process of instituting a responsible renter program. This is a program that is being used in a number of cities throughout the region. It's Naperville.
Some rental properties, they have biannual inspections.
What it has to do with all these kinds of things. It gives the opportunity for you know, the city to deal better with like nuisance properties. It gives the landlord teeth to get rid of nuisance folks as well. Things that are not necessarily, they don't have the teeth to do it without this. And so we're right in the process of putting that together for the city as a whole, for the rental units everywhere.
This being such a large, you know, issue coming up, that we grab hold of that situation before it's established in it. And when you can't do anything about it, later on.
Well, they would be under this same rule, but fortunately, the one nice thing.
I want to be, they should be grandfathered in, that they're, if we came across that, they're already built. What I'm saying is we should have some type of.
If I could address, the current zoning is R2, which is what the developer is proposing. There's no limitation in the zoning code, and as stated by Lance, that there's nothing in the code that prohibits a single-family dwelling unit from being rented. So the annexation agreement put in place in that same site R2 zoning. That R2 zoning is going to stay on that property regardless of whether this concept is approved, regardless of whether the annexation expires. So it stays with the land. The city doesn't go and force the rezoning of this parcel to R1 or some other zoning because it believes that that's in the best interest. There's a lot of other protection for the property owner that prevents the city from forced rezoning of this property that's zoned R2, that this development plan would be allowed to develop.
So the short answer is, John, we're in a position where we have to manage property that's R2, and you know, how do we? When a rental community like this comes in, it's not a matter of us being able to say no because they're rentals. It's like, okay, how do we work this and with all the other concerns and make it work if it's possible? So.
And another concern I was, I haven't been out to all the meetings, but the one I was at, it did show photographs of an established property. Looked like it wasn't occupied yet.
Please talk closer to the
Oh, yeah,
microphone.
into the mic, John, please. Sorry.
Yeah, the last one meeting I was at, they showed photographs of a subdivision that was built by Redwood, and it wasn't occupied at all. There wasn't a single car in the driveway, wasn't a single resident walking around, and they were elevated and shot at such an angle that it's elongating the properties, making them look bigger and grander. With today's technology, I see a gentleman at Mount Rushmore, I see a gentleman on Paradise today. He's at the meeting. How come we can't see any real live pictures?
Are you talking about of a Redwood
Occupied
development?
Redwood, yeah. Especially maybe they're older ones, so we could say, see, they do take care of them or they don't. Live video chats or video feeds, you can see.
Maps.
Well, that's okay. You know what? Well,
Yeah, but those are
we can
years old.
we can let Kelly address
What I'm
that.
saying is, you go there on a busy time, like on a Saturday afternoon where there's cars in and out. See what type of traffic they have, how big of lanes are going in and out of the place.
Sure. Okay. So concerns about is Redwood product what they say it is? I guess that would be.
Yeah, I mean, it looks
Okay.
nice in the beginning, but what's 5-10 years out?
Okay. Well, I'm sure Kelly can answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next one is Aaron.
Aaron?
Hi.
Oh, hi, Aaron. I'm sorry. I was waiting for you. My apologies. Go ahead.
So first, first, thanks for having the opportunity, giving me the opportunity the last couple times to talk with you guys via Zoom or whatnot, so I appreciate that. Really quickly, I did have the opportunity to see some things, responses that have come back from some of the board members here that are extremely abhorrent, and some of the board members should be really embarrassed to have spoken to some of the community members the way that they did. I'm just going to say that first and foremost. They know who they are. I don't need to name them by name. So, first of all, I've had the opportunity to listen to the city's thoughts and their reasonings for listening to Redwood's proposals and also the residents' reasonings for not wanting this building. While I understand that this land is going to be developed regardless of this or another development, I truly believe that this particular project is not the right one for our community. The traffic impact alone would be horrendous, and the designated turning lanes that you guys have proposed that are in the original plan are not going to solve the problem. What I do believe will solve this problem is going to be a traffic light that's going to be at the entrance and exit of Broken Arrow. Since it's directly across the street from what Redwood is proposing, that is the only solution that I can see that's going to be any sort of remedy to the problem that we currently have right now. Also, I've read the reviews of the properties that Redwood currently has in Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Indiana. I don't know if you guys have read them. They're not all really that kind. I don't know if that's something that we want to see here. Some of them include things, I know that they're not like smoke-free. They're supposed to be smoke-free facilities. While they may be inside, outside, apparently they're littered with cigarette butts. I don't know if management is responsible for cleaning them up. Harassment by neighbors that management isn't really helping with. Absentee management, inside of the facilities not being repaired, things of that nature. I took some time this weekend to really kind of look up things of those natures. What else did I see? The other thing I wanted to bring up really quick, you guys had talked about Section 8 housing and wanting to put language in the agreement between you guys and Redwood. So I am a government guaranteed lender. And while you guys can put all the language...
Can you please talk closer to the mic?
Oh, sorry, I'm a little short, so I'm trying to talk as close as I can, so I'll stand on my tiptoes. I'm a government guaranteed lender, so you guys can put all the language that you guys want to in between you guys and Redwood. If a person comes up with a Section 8 voucher, and they come up to Redwood and they have their other 28.5% of the rent payment, Redwood can accept it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You guys have no say whatsoever. They can go ahead and accept it. As long as they can pay the payment, there's nothing that the city can do. There's nothing that anybody else can do. If they can make the payment, that's fine. There's nothing else that anybody can do. You guys can put all the language that you want in there, and there's nothing that anybody else can do. So I just kind of wanted to get that cleared up there. It's against the law to actually, and I think you guys know that as well, it's against the law to actually forbid anything like that. You guys talk, many of you guys don't have to deal with the traffic in and out of Broken Arrow or on Farrell every single day. Those of us in Broken Arrow have to deal with it every single day, and I don't have to keep harping on that. So please just keep in mind that it is a burden on us every single day, getting in and out every single day, turning left, turning right, trying to get, you have kids that are coming from both directions every single day. It's just you're putting in another ingress and egress, one part across the street, same way. It is just going to be that much more burdensome. You guys know that there was a petition that went around, 1,300 signatures. So you know that me and many others that signed the petition feel very strongly about this. We hope that you guys take our feelings into consideration as you all work for the people of this community, and we as the people of the community are telling you how we feel. We know that some of you are up for re-election and that your constituents will remember this. And if you took their feelings into consideration come November. Redwood also claims that they run background checks on all people who live there, as well as for people who sign their leases. Well, after that lease is signed, all bets are off. How do I know that? Because I signed a lease once. Shortly after I signed that lease, I had a boyfriend move in. My boyfriend lived there for well over a year. He wasn't on that lease, so guess what? There was no background check that was run on him. He could have very well been a criminal. After that boyfriend moved out, I had another friend move in. That friend wasn't on the lease. No background check run on that friend. That friend could have very well been a criminal. Luckily, they weren't. Do we really want that to happen in this community? There is no checks and balances once that lease is signed. You don't know who's going to move in and move out. You don't know who's going to be on that lease or who isn't going to be on that lease. So please keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
I will make just a couple comments. We did receive the petition at 1,300 signatures, and I know that people oftentimes will fill these out, online petitions, because they feel like it's a way to give their voice. They are difficult for the council because names on there were as far away as Hong Kong and other cities, and they're very hard. And then we also know that when petitions are made, they're usually given with very low information or worded in such a way that, of course, somebody's going to say no to anything that's on there. What I do appreciate, though, as opposed to petitions, is when folks like yourself and others reached out to me and all the folk directly so that we could respond. I do apologize for any kind of responses that you've gotten from the council that were problematic. I apologize for that. But we've tried to have good dialogue, and I appreciate when citizens do that, when they reach out, when we got on Zoom meetings together, and that doesn't end. We continue to do this for this project. No, it's okay. All I'm saying is,
Individual knows who they are.
all I meant was, as far as the petition goes, it's hard for us to judge anybody's full knowledge on it, but I do know that when I've talked to you, that we're having a conversation. So I appreciate those kind of interactions. I will say this on the keeping tabs of who's in leasing, and I'm sure Aaron will, or Kelly can address that later, but I'll say this. You know, I live in town, the old part of town. There's nobody keeping track of who moves in next to me. I mean, I've got 3 predators within walking distance. There's zero accountability. At least here, there is some oversight, and there are some, contractual things. And sure, people can slip through, but everywhere else in the city, you got nothing to say who your neighbor is. So
No, what I'm saying is, so it could be me who signs the lease for a 2-bedroom apartment. So it's
Yep.
just me who moves in, and usually it was always me who signed the lease because I always needed a 2-bedroom apartment because I had so much stuff.
I totally get it. I got it down. Keeping tabs on who is leasing, and if Redwood is keeping, how do they keep track of that? So
So somebody else can move in with me and, 6 months after the fact.
yep, we will. Well, I'll let Kelly address that one, the petitioner, how they keep tabs on it. Okay.
May I ask Aaron,
Yep.
what answers you received? Could you kind of elaborate a little bit on that? That's somebody that had said something that didn't really.
You know what? I know what it's about, and I've addressed it. So, and again, I apologize. I have talking to the person on the council, so I've addressed it. So we can talk about it later if you want.
Okay.
Okay. Aaron, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. I got Laura. I guess Laura, I don't know how to say her last name. D-A-O-I?
That one doesn't turn off.
I'm not too sure now, should be okay.
Laura, if you could just tell us your name and...
Okay, my name is Laura Davey, and I live in Broken Arrow. I've been here 17 years, moved out here from Oak Lawn, basically to get away from all the congestion, and here I am right in the middle of it again. So you don't want to hear what everybody, I understand, it's like...
It's not that I don't want to hear it.
No, I understand, everybody's brought up a lot of points, that especially, the traffic, which is a huge, huge problem. But what I do want to say is that, and I
can't hear anything.
Okay.
Is the mic in front of her?
Can you hear me?
Is it red?
It's green.
You should be able to hear it.
No? Push it?
Okay, well, what about right now? I'm sorry, can you just say a few
it's okay.
words? Can you hear now, Joanne?
I really am, I pretty much have a big enough mouth that you guys can hear me without it.
They can hear them from their houses, yes.
Hey, guys, how are you?
You just need to get as close as possible to the mic.
We're good?
that's all.
Do I have to repeat myself, or I'm good?
Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Sorry.
So, you heard, the rest of it. Anyway, so my biggest point is that, I feel like with property values, this is gonna be a huge concern. I know something's gonna go up there and something might be able to go up there. I just feel like rental properties are not the way to go. I also feel like this is a really terrible, terrible time. It's something that, an unprecedented time, where we're not able to you mentioned, Mayor, about the 1,300 signatures. Well, unless every 1,300 people plus come in with the mask on to tell you how we feel, you're not going to be able to know how people feel. That is a way to get our word out. And I personally know everyone in my community has signed it. I personally know my community is against this. I had sent you, you and Darren, if there was a possibility that we could make Redwood, or if there was a way to see if they could make it an actual 55-plus community. I don't know if there's a way, but we already have rental properties that are not even occupied right now, so I don't understand why we're pursuing more. And I also don't understand, I think that 55 and plus, that's actually pretty close to my age group. So I would feel better if I was going to rent an apartment, knowing that I had people that were in the same position that I am, as opposed to maybe getting a frat house apartment next door. Doesn't have to be a frat house. I mean, that's a bad example, but I think that Laga Vista would feel much more comfortable with people that have the same kind of issues. Also, with discussing with Sandy, the Legacy Ranch could be really great for that, because it's very therapeutic for people that have dementia and Alzheimer's issues. I just think if there was a way that we could get them to say that it could possibly be more of a 55 and plus, and I don't think they would have, I think actually it would make it easier for them to rent it. So I don't want to say what everybody else has said, because you've already heard it and you know how everybody stands, but I don't think that people should dismiss the petition that was signed. I think that there are way, way more people that don't want this, but I have spoken with you and I understand the concerns if this is not gone through, that something will go through. I just wish it wasn't a rental property. I wish it was homes, and I wish we could make it into more of a retirement community. Anything else I would say has basically been said by people that are like-minded like myself, and have said it way more eloquently than I probably can. So I appreciate your consideration. I think that we should have a lot of consideration. We're the people that will be dealing with this. Will be the people that will be coming in and out of our subdivisions and trying to get around. It's already so congested. So that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate your time. Okay. We got Mike Donahue.
That's a cool one. It's a fishing gator. All the other ones fell apart.
Mike, if you could just say your name and.
Mike Donahue. I'm tall.
Hey, we need an adjustable mic. I'm sorry.
Yeah. First, I just want to, especially Mayor Straight and Lance, just thank you for the whole process. Just the very respectful and cordial kind of back and forth and conversation we've been able to have. It's been a little bit of a breath of fresh air throughout the process. So thank you very much. I appreciate what y'all are doing. I know it's not an easy job that y'all have, having to make very hard decisions, but from where I'm sitting, I think from where the community's sitting right now, is y'all are trying to make a very easy decision, pretty difficult. I don't think it makes very much sense to do this right now during this pandemic, and I don't want to belabor the same points that everyone else has made, but it was pretty disconcerting and frankly alarming today to learn that this development could in fact be fast-tracked, and I don't understand why we're rushing to build a new apartment development when there's already a nearly empty apartment development in Lockport. Lockport is the city of historic pride, soon to be the city of historic pride and warehouses and apartment developments. Really to no benefit of the taxpayer either, that I can tell. I'm sure like many of you and many of the people outside, I got my tax bill a week or so ago, and they went up again, and I guess we're wondering how many warehouses and apartment developments does it take before we see some relief on our end. Other than that, I know you've seen the emails, you've taken the calls, you've taken the meetings, which again, can't tell you how much we appreciate. You've seen the petition. So I would just ask that everyone please stop making this easy decision so difficult, and if you can't do anything else, then at least I would ask that this gets extended until a time where more of the community concerns can be heard if you're going to discount the online petition.
Sure.
Thanks.
Mike, let me clarify what I meant. The online petitions are tough for us because I oftentimes see how they're worded. It's like, hey, they have a Section 8 high-rise, or I mean, the wording is so off of what's factual, it's hard to have conversations, or the fact that I'm sure everyone who wanted to sign it, Broken Arrow signed it. It's when you see addresses like from Hong Kong and other cities on there, it's just that's just where it becomes
Hong Kong's on the
difficult for us.
internet too, Mayor. It's a public petition.
I know, and so that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to discount it. You're right. So it's where people find they can have a voice. But again, it's like I really try to have conversations, so I know that people know what we're talking about. So I don't mean to discount it. It's just trying to understand why. By the way, just a couple things. The Highlands, the apartments up north. I did talk with Tim Grogan. He's the manager of them. He says at the moment they're 51% occupied for the buildings that they have. He felt actually that they were doing fine. They're still under construction, obviously. I'm just trying to lay out the information I got, because I'm always wanting to know too how it's going. And so he felt that the COVID thing has slowed down a little bit. He felt that he would have had more tenants by now, but he says in the last few weeks it's definitely all the dismay and confusion that's going on in the world has slowed it. So I say that for no other reason, just to give you the information I was given. Sure. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right.
Thanks, Mike, for coming out. All right, Philip.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, Philip. You just say your name and we'll get started.
Yes, my name is Philip Casto. I'm a resident here in Lockport. I'm a relatively new resident. I purchased a home in Lockport about 2 years ago. And my name is on the petition, Mayor. My name is there, so is my wife's name, so are my neighbors' names. We read that petition and believed that it was the right thing to sign. It was not fictitious or something on the internet that got passed around. We read it, we committed to it, and fully understand what it meant. I'd just like to give you guys a little bit of background about my position on the development. And I just moved to Lockport a couple of years ago from Tinley Park. I owned a condominium in Tinley Park, and our development unit decided to allow for rental units within our facility. And within 3 years of the rental community moving in to our facility that had pride in ownership, that had a lot of people that took care of their units, that had, the place looked good. That's all there is to it. Within 3 years of that, the problems that we encountered were those that are off the paper, right? I don't necessarily understand or care necessarily what restrictions the apartment complex puts in place for the renters. So the problems aren't with what's on paper. The problems that we encountered were that although the renters were limited to 3 per unit, that's what was on paper. And we would have units with 8, 9, 10 people living in one unit. And then we had traffic problems because the traffic assessments and surveys that you guys have done, they're based on what's on paper, 2 people per unit or 3 people per unit. Once people start to crowd into these rental units, which does happen, then all that stuff goes out the window. All your studies about the traffic congestion, all your studies about the sewage problems, the water usage, it's not as anticipated because you get one thing on paper and then smack, here's reality, and it's not what was promised on paper. So that's the issue that I have when we allow a massive, this is a massive development, 140 units. That's a massive development to bring into the community. And if it doesn't pan out to the exact, way that it's intended to, then we're on the hook for it as the residents. So we moved here from Tinley to get away from that condominium association to a neighborhood that people took pride in their homes, that people loved where they lived. And that's what brought us to Lockport. We've been here for 2 years and we love it. And we just want to make sure that it stays, it doesn't start changing on us through some new developments. So that was the main point that I wanted to put in place with you all, is that no matter what's on paper, once you get those renters in there, it's a different animal, I guess is the only way to put it, to be honest with you, and to keep it clean, right? We moved out. We didn't want to move out. We didn't want to live Tinley. I grew up and loved Tinley Park. I didn't want to leave there, but it just didn't make sense to stay anymore because we had all sorts of what I'll just call social issues that were associated with overcrowding and inconsiderate neighbors that didn't take any pride in the community, that didn't take pride in their properties, and that were quite frankly disrespectful. So I'm not promising that'll happen here or not. I just know that it's an accepted risk when you allow a massive apartment complex to be put up, that you are at that point in time accepting the risks of overcrowding that are going to be uncontrollable. Now, I understand some of the other points that were made I'm in agreement with here, and I don't want to harp on all of the same points that were already made, but I do have to wonder that, if 140 units was the maximum that was, as I understand it, approved in 2004, so that's, over a decade ago, right? How has the rest of the community, continued to grow without massive rental properties here in Lockport? How have we been able to not have a need for this for so long, almost 2 decades now, and now all of a sudden there's an opportunity for it to move through the community on what was described earlier as a fast track? That just doesn't seem appropriate to me. It doesn't seem responsible to me to allow something like that to occur. So that was what I wanted to share with everyone today, is that my real concerns are what's not on paper, because I lived it. I had to move away from it. And I don't want that to happen here to this community, and I don't want there to be some good renters that move in, and over 140 units is massive. Like, think about it. That's giant. That's a ton of people moving in. And it doesn't take a whole lot of them to drive off the good renters, is all I'm saying. You get a few bad apples, and the good renters, they say, no, thank you. I don't have patience for this or time for this, and then pretty soon, you end up with an undesirable location, and here we are stuck with it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Phil. Let me just clarify a couple things, because I do think that this is some of the misinformation that's out there, is that it's actually 159 units, not 140. What the thing is, people believe that it's just a matter of us saying, no, we don't want this, and it's done. The problem is the land is zoned, and it has property rights. Right now, we're in a concept phase just because, Redwood wanted to do a concept. They didn't have to do a concept. But because they were asking for the extra 19 units, it's like, well, you're going to need to come to a concept so we can have these conversations that we're having now. Here's the thing. If a Section 8 subsidized subdivision that's 140 units comes in after we say we denied Redwood, there's nothing we can do about it. It's going in because it's got zoning and property rights. That's the position we are in as a council. It's not just like stand up and say no. Like, how do I manage a situation that I've got legacy zoning on? If this were unincorporated and an empty parcel that was not in the city of Lockport and they wanted to come in, we could say no. And we've done it. We've done it with warehousing. I know everybody thinks we're endless warehousing. We've turned down almost 4 million square feet of warehousing. And some of it's because it doesn't have the zoning. And when they don't have the zoning, we can say no. When there's zoning in place, there's property rights. it's say, for instance, this, if you owned an empty lot in Broken Arrow and you decided you wanted to build a house in there, the neighbors might hate the idea. The neighbors were like, man, that's where we barbecue and the kids play stickball and my view is gonna be screwed up. I got this guy gonna build a house. As long as you build it within the code, nobody can say no on the council just because neighbors don't like it. And that's the difficult position that we're in right now, is that we're trying to manage. Now, we can actually say no because there's 19 more units, so we can. But then the question will be, is Redwood a good development, right? Is it a worthwhile development? Do they have a good management system? And you're right, man, we don't have a crystal ball. If all appearances, they look like they're a good company that will manage their properties well. Although, you know, we've heard some feedback that not all of them, and Erin can address that when she comes up. She can defend it. But you're right, I don't have a crystal ball. But ultimately, that's the position that we struggle with here as the council. And I know everybody's like, oh, we're going to vote you guys out. That's fine. It's your right to do so. But understand, we're not just saying, hey, this is great, and there's some hands tied. And then it's like, if we say no, what else could go there? Now, you made a comment about, like, well, how come nothing else has been built over there? Let's be frank, man. The reason home builders are not building single-family homes is because it's the Fairmont School District and it has a bad reputation. Do I feel that justification for the school district is justified? I don't. I think it's actually a good school district. But they have lower scores than other districts. And while they have pluses, like they're not overcrowded, and while they have, they were like the only school ready for e-learning, I mean, they have a lot of pluses, but the low school scores are problematic. That's why nobody's building single-family homes on this lot. That's why down by the Cross Point Church, there's a whole subdivision, all the roads were put in. It died after the recession. No one's built houses there because it's in the Fairmont School District. Developers and builders, they're going to look at it and say, I can't sell the house there. So that's why, in all likelihood, that's why we keep getting rental projects here. There was another rental project that came here a year ago, but it was so many units. I forget how many. It was like 200-something units. It was so big, and it was multi-units, that was so far outside of the PUD, it's like, yes, we can say no.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but isn't 140 the maximum number?
It's what the PUD agrees for, so you're correct. We can say no to it. So either what happens is Redwood would say, that's fine, we can live with 140 units, at which point there's not a lot I can do about it. And in fact, they'd have a right to just go to fast track. In other words, they could, by rights, because it's already been zoned, they don't have to come back to a preliminary, they can go straight to final. So while I get how it sounds like, oh my gosh, the council's trying to fast track this. The problem is, if this is a project that they can meet all of our concerns, which is the flooding and the traffic and how we're going to mitigate those are real concerns, right? That if they can meet those things, then the question comes to, is pushing them out the right move? Because I don't know what else can come. And if they just drop to 140 units, they can go right to final regardless of what we say.
Well, maybe it's a discussion for a different day, but what's the process look like to rezone it? If there's so many people in the community that think it's zoned improperly, what's the process look like to rezone it?
The process is the property owner has to agree, and the property owner doesn't want to agree. The property owner's like, I'm selling this. I'm not going to rezone it to open. Believe me, if Sandy next door wanted to buy it and turn it into horse trails for her, we'd approve it in a second, man. A second, right? So that's kind of the struggle that we have to face as a council. And I know it's hard to understand. And that's, why, like, it's better when we have a conversation so we can explain these things a little bit better, as opposed to, why is this council just fast tracking and throwing this at us? Don't they know what we want? I know exactly what we want. I live here too. I can tell you what we want. No more houses. I want a Target. I want a Home Depot. I want Buffalo Wild Wings. I want a Trader Joe's, right? I mean, I live here too. I know what everybody wants. It's just what the market is and what some of the realities are. So we do the best we can. But I don't know, I just kind of wanted to make sure you guys understood some of the positions that what we can and can't do as in America, because people have property rights.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to voice my concerns today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that you came out here, man. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, Phil. Next person is, I believe it's Opie, O-P-I-E. There can't be more than one of those.
Calso.
Opie?
Opie Calso. Hello. Hi.
Hello, I'm sorry.
That's
Did
okay.
I think I said
That's
your
ready
name
for you.
wrong?
Yes, I saw you last week.
Oh, yes, I do, but I did mask on. so
Yeah,
it's like-
yeah, right.
All right, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much for hearing us out, and Mayor, I appreciate you, and Lance, thank you very, very much for everything. I do have a couple of things that I just want to bring up. I know I brought up a few things when we were at the meeting last week, and I hear everyone's issue today, and I appreciate what you're listening to Aaron and you're listening to Laura, and we all have our concerns. I do have two things that I want to address. One is that, just like Aaron said, people can move in and people can move out, okay? Nobody has any clue what's going on. This development is from Ohio, and I understand that they have a maintenance team that comes between us and possibly the concept plan that was introduced in Plainfield, okay? And what I was told, and I'm not sure if that's true, that the maintenance team goes from one development to the other and makes sure that everything's taken care of. However, we don't know that. Two, you have 5 people in a unit. My question to you is this. You have 5 people. If 5 people have vehicles, I know people that do not use their garages for their vehicles. Their cars sit outside. That means that if 5 people are driving, you might possibly have 2 in the driveway and 3 on the street. Is that going to be allowed in Lockport? Because we don't get allowed, we're not allowed to park on the street. Okay, that's my first concern. Second concern, just like Aaron said, we have people who could move in and out. No one has a clue. Does the police department have the plates of the vehicles who live there? The property management team are the only ones who are around. I mean, are they around constantly? Do they know every person that moves in and out of of the 160 units? That's another concern. My other concern is I do this for a living. I know for a fact that doing background checks, anybody can get their records expunged. In the state of Illinois, it's very easy. Online courses, they teach you how to do that. Your records expunged. How extensive are those background checks? That's my question.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Opie. I'm just writing notes down so we can make sure we ask Television. And the last, I get a couple more cards. No, that's right. Last card is for Cody.
Hello, my name is Cody Sonarowski. I'm a new resident as well of Lockport.
Cody, can you speak up a little bit louder into the microphone, please?
Okay, sure. What type of rainfall storage improvements will Redwood have or be installing into this development?
Yeah, you're asking about sewer and rainwater and...
Yeah, storage, so reservoirs, conveyance, channels, dikes, anything like that? I was just wondering.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely answer that question. So, because that's all of our concerns too. So right now we're just gathering everybody, make sure we've heard everything from you. I know that's on my list of asking too. So, anything else?
Also, just which rainfall depth, frequency you'll be using. You know, whether it be like 100-year, 24 hours, or...
Sure, that's a great question because it seems like we're getting 100-year rain every 6 months now. So yes, okay.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, that's all the cards I have. So why don't we got lots of questions here. I know council has some of their own concerns as well. Yeah, so what I want to do is just give Kelly an opportunity to address these concerns that from residents. So can we, there she is. Hello, Kelly. Appreciate you.
Hello.
Okay. So I'm sure you took notes as well. If you want to just address them as you go, and if there's any that are outstanding, we can keep having a conversation. So please. And by the way, I just want to I do want to thank you for, reaching out to the community early on. I know people don't always realize that that was something you guys did totally on your own. And then your willingness to bump the meeting a little bit so that I could talk to residents. I don't mean to take your thunder. One thing I'll say is I know people were very concerned about the pandemic. Kelly was actually ready to not have this meeting until June because we were under the impression that we'd be out of this pandemic by then. That was the governor's original order. But when he came out with this 5-phase that people gatherings over 10, it's not going to happen until phase 5 when we have a vaccine. It's like, that's like could be never. So it just became to a point where, okay, why don't we do what we can to have this conversation in the kind of new world that we're living in. So, but I appreciate your patience. So please address any concerns that you heard.
Great, thank you. And I do appreciate everyone's concerns and voicing them. I know whenever you think of apartments coming in near you, it can be frightening, although we have many studies that show that apartments, particularly Redwood apartments, we have studies specifically using Redwood apartments as case studies, don't affect property values. But there is sort of, it can feel counterintuitive, and our program is not the usual apartment program. So I always welcome the chance to hear the concerns and talk about Redwood a little bit and hopefully get people a little more comfortable, move them a little closer to comfort, even if it does not happen at once, or for some people never. But I do appreciate everyone voicing their concerns. One thing I wanted to mention right off the top that's always helpful to understand with Redwood is that Redwood is an owner-operated company. We have 450, 470 employees at this point. And what I do is the smallest part of what we do. Acquisitions is maybe 50 people. The greater part of what Redwood does is property management. That is what we are. We are a property management firm. And that means that we own everything we've ever built. I mean, what we do is we build quality, distinctive apartment neighborhoods, and then we staff them and we hold them. We started building in 2003, and we still own everything we've ever built today. So we're going to be here, and that's why we had a neighbor meeting. And our neighbor to the north has concerns about her trees, and so we're trying to schedule something. But with the stay-at-home orders in Chicago, or in Illinois, and in Ohio, where I am, that can be challenging. But we're in regular communication. I'm in regular communication with the Lago Vista HOAs. I've given Ms. Molesky my card when she feels like a one-on-one would be helpful. So we keep trying to reach out and overcome some of these objections and talk about what we do. So to get into the concerns that I heard, Ms. Molesky had some questions about process, which Ms. Williams addressed. Some questions about our price point. There was some confusion about the price point early on. That's on me. I think at the last meeting we corrected that and gave a definitive answer that our average rents are $1.60 a square foot. That's what we're pro forma-ing the neighborhood at. That comes out to an average of $2,100 to $2,300 a month per apartment home. And those differences can depend on a couple of things. It can depend on whether you're a middle unit or an end unit, whether you're located near a storm pond, so you've got a view, or maybe you don't have such a nice view. If you're in a big sunroom unit, so you have more square footage. So those are averages. Even the averages you see has a little swing, and that's again because of the different different premiums that go into the pricing. But we are modeling at $1.60 a square foot, and as I mentioned, that comes out to $2,100 to $2,300 per square foot.
Kelly, can I ask a question?
Yes.
The communities that you've put that price point out, have you always been able to get them? And then for our community, Will County, that I don't know anywhere in Will County that's getting that kind of number for a rent. So what makes you think that that can work here?
Well, it's actually a lower price per square foot than Highland Square has. I think they're at like somewhere between, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but they're somewhere between I think their lower end was like at $1.90 a square, and their higher end was up above $2 a square. Now the $2 is for the more studio apartments with maybe an end unit. So, the fewer square feet you have, the less price point you're gonna get, right? Like it's buying things in bulk versus buying a little, right? So Highland Square is actually priced higher than we are. We're actually coming into the market at what we think is conservative because this is our first time in the Illinois market. We've got a couple neighborhoods that we're working on. We want to make sure that the neighborhood's going to be successful. So we actually think that in our Illinois neighborhoods are probably going to get more than the $1.60 a square, but we're coming in conservative because we want to make sure that our financial model works. Even those conservative numbers are based on comps. We have a whole team of people that works with software and then does research with in-person research and computer research on like apartments.com, things like that, in order to determine what that rent is. We don't set pie in the sky rent. We don't, we're in the business of making some money, right? So we want to set a good rent. We want to make sure we recoup our expenses. And so we feel very confident at that rent. And as you noted, Highland Square's rental, well, I keep hearing that it's off base. It's not where it's performing where it's supposed to be. But our broker has also chatted with the owner of Highland Square, and he feels like, or the Highland Apartments, and he feels that they're right on track as well. One interesting thing about our apartments is our rental turns are up. So if you come into our apartment, we are more likely to rent to you than we were pre-COVID, which we had great renoways. We're occupied well in the 90% everywhere that we have apartment homes. And part of that has to do with the fact that if you are looking to have a place where you're not sharing common spaces, where you're not sharing touch points, where you have your own door handle to open, you have your own laundry facility, right? We don't have washers and dryers, but we're plumb for them. You can bring them in. If you're looking for your own garage door to touch, and you don't want to touch where other people have touched, we can offer that for you. We certainly have never thought of ourselves as a pandemic product. That's not the way we think, but the feedback that we're getting at this point from the last couple months is that with these new concerns that we're all dealing with, this is something about our homes that is attractive. So we're not feeling the pain that Highlands is feeling, a little rental slowdown for the pandemic, and we don't expect that we will have a slow lease up in really any place that we are in Illinois. Tons of population and a great median income, right where we like to be, and right where we think we can offer something to the neighborhood as well. And I'll get into that a little more as I go through some of the other residents' concerns. Ms. Molesky raised a concern about sewer capacity. The city has assured us that there's appropriate capacity. We would also like to be able to flush our toilets. It's hard to get $1.60 or more a square foot if you can't flush your toilets. So we'll be making sure that we have appropriate capacity moving forward. We'll work closely with the engineers on that. Ms. Molesky also raised a point about secondary access. We're happy to do a secondary access. I know the city likes the access point where it is. That's where we have a primary access. We do have a secondary access for emergency vehicles further up. You don't see it on the site plan called out like an access point because it's going to be probably grass seeded or something that doesn't encourage traffic there. That's something we're happy to continue talking about. We have the capacity to do second access, but we also want to make sure that everyone is happy with that.
Yeah, that will be something that we'll want to talk about. I mean, we've had a number of subdivisions built over the years that have single access, and they're always problematic. And so instead of just an emergency access, I do want to talk with Lance and talk about a functioning egress to the north, but we'll put that on the table to talk about. Okay.
The next thing Ms. Molesky asked was the largest percentage of students in any Redwood neighborhood. I don't know the answer to that. And the reason I don't know the answer is, one, no one's ever asked before, so I haven't had to find the answer. But the second answer is that we've been building apartment homes since 2003. That is 17 years. And we have 12,000, or actually close to 13,000 at this point, maybe a little over, apartment homes in our portfolio. When you have a sample size of that large a sample size, it is really hard for one or two outliers to meaningfully change the average number across your portfolio. So we don't, we feel that number is really, it's a powerful number. the other thing that's really interesting about our statistics is they don't generally change over time. I'll talk about traffic a little bit later. I will say that we did a traffic study maybe 10 years ago. So we had, we knew like how much traffic we were generating, what was the average number of cars per neighborhood, what did people look like, what did the trips look like at peak trip hours, things like that. And we recertified those last year, the year before, and the numbers were almost exactly the same. And what that says is that what we are building is built so specifically to our target audience that we're able, that's who rents to us, because we are able to build for them. And we've been able to do that consistently across the portfolio. Our product has gotten prettier over the years. We've gotten better at processes. As we've gone from a small company to a large company, scalable processes, things like that. But what hasn't changed is the core business that we do, and that is why you see such stable, consistent statistics across the years, including with the number of school children that we have in a neighborhood. Can move on to Ms. Long had a concern about access because we are crossing Broken Arrow. I know, Mr. Mayor, you just committed to us kind of visiting on that more, so I'll consider that addressed and move on to Mr. Wilkins. He says he would like to see some live pictures of actual neighborhoods. So first of all, we send out drones that probably the reason there are no cars there is we might have sent out a drone at like an odd hour or something, so we would not catch that, so you could see more of what it looks like with the driveway and the streets. But I will say you can go to the Redwood Living has a TV station. It's on YouTube. It's redwoodtv.com. So you can just search it when you get there. This is actually the keyword behind me of one of our homes. And you can take a look at communities. You can do virtual tours inside. You can get pictures from the outside. So you can actually see what some of our neighborhoods look like. If anyone wanted to take a field trip, you can also go to any of our neighborhoods in Indiana or Michigan. We also have external photos where at our website byredwood.com, you can also see external photos there. So you can see what the neighborhoods look like. I'm certainly not opposed to providing additional photos. We have many photos in our marketing. Our marketing team puts together lots of photos. Those are the ones that you've seen in the presentation. And those are our actual communities. So that is a good idea of what they look like.
And we can gather that, Lance can gather that information so we can make sure it's available for people to easily access. Okay.
Mr. Wilkins also had a concern. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Please. You have probably the same list I do, so go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Wilkins finally had a concern about what our neighborhoods look like 5 to 10 years out. I can find some pictures and send those over. I drive them, I'm in them, they look good. They are at least 94 to 98% leased, depending on when you catch them in the turnover. They're all getting market rates. So you can't get that kind of market rate without a great looking neighborhood. So I'm happy to take pictures and send you some of our neighborhoods.
Kelly, may I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
So as far as the maintenance goes, there's a service that does the lawns, common grounds. Okay. So that's taken care of within.
Yes, so we have, when we're under construction, like we'll start moving people in right as soon as we can get certificates of occupancy. So we'll actually move people in while we're still building the neighborhood. That helps, the bank gets happy with that. It lowers the bank's risk, so the bank likes when we do that. So in those early days when we don't have substantial amount of the community built or a substantial amount of the landscaping in, our service team does do some of that themselves. There is a point, and I don't know when it is, in that process where we get so many homes that it is untenable for a maintenance person to help with construction, help give our residents the level of service we provide them, and do all the landscaping. That's untenable. So at that point, we hire someone I sent over the landscape and snowplow specs to Lance, so those are available for anyone to take a look at. That's our scope of work for all our landscape contractors and our snowplow contractors.
Thank you, but that's
our internal drivers.
all that maintained, you know, within, that's,
Yes, yes.
thank you.
And then we do, we have our maintenance team and our higher level in the maintenance whole or section of our organization do what are called, they do weekly inspections and quarterly inspections. The quarterly inspections get really in depth with how clean is your sign, are your letters even, how does the mail kiosk look, is it clean, do we need to clean the concrete, all those sorts of things. So we're also doing those sort of in-depth checks ourselves. So it's important to us to have both a sharp-looking neighborhood from a routine maintenance standpoint, and a sharp-looking, well-preserved investment from a long-term standpoint.
And so, Kelly, you may have just said it, but let me just understand it properly. There is an on-site maintenance person, or does that person float from different communities? How does that work?
No, I would say like 99% of our neighborhoods have a live-in on-site leasing professional and a live-in on-site maintenance technician. And why I say 99% is not because we're looking for opportunities to leverage teams across neighborhoods. Why I say that is because as we've grown, we have bigger staffing needs, and we have high standards. So we've got to provide a lot of high performing staff. So if we find someone who's really great at their job, has great recommendations, has great passion for Redwood, and we want to hire them, and they have, say, a home in Homer Glen or Plainfield, we're not going to tell them to take their kids out of the school system to come live with us, right? So, you know, in those rare instances, we would not have, that position might be not a live-in position. But generally, it is our program to have at every neighborhood a live-in on-site leasing professional and a live-in on-site maintenance technician.
But the people that live off-site, how does that work? Do they just come in every day, or do they just come in when there's a problem? How does an off-site maintenance person work for you guys?
Well, they have regular hours and on-call hours as well. So, and then, you know, if someone's, I would say the nice thing about having multiple neighborhoods in a certain area is that if someone is off, because even our live-in professionals need a day off, right? There are local teams that we can leverage to make sure that things are serviced, even when someone has a day off.
Okay.
Erin, I did not get her last name, my apologies, so I'll use her first name. I hope that's all right. Erin had a couple concerns. Her first concern was about traffic impact. So across our portfolio, again, 13,000 units at this point. We're right around 13,000 at this point in the year. We have an average of 1.65 residents per unit per apartment home. So again, with that big a sample, it's really hard. You've got to have a lot of outliers to swing it one way or the other. So that's a pretty healthy sample, so pretty solid number. We also have an average of 1.5 cars per apartment home. Again, taken from that big sample. So at 159 units, that is 238 and a half cars that we would expect at Redwood. The average single-family home has 2.28 cars per neighborhood. That's from a 2008 Experian study. It's old. It's still the one that everybody cites in all their articles. So 2.28 cars per single-family home. Even if a single-family developer came into this site with 140 units, that would be 319.2 cars. So that's almost 80 cars more than we would have. It's also people traveling at peak hours. So because our residents are generally empty nesters, 70% of our residents are empty nesters. We are not age restricted, which I'll talk about later. They also tend to travel not at peak hours. So again, we're single family people, and you've got family, you've got kids, you're traveling at the school hours, the general work hours. You're gonna see a little more traffic than you're gonna see from Redwood. Will there be an impact? Of course, there will be an impact, but it's going to be less. It's likely going to be less than what you would see if a single-family home came in and developed the site at 140 homes. Aaron also had a concern about our online reviews. It's really hard to talk about online reviews because generally the people who are posting negative online reviews are people who are not happy with rent issues, security deposit issues, things like that. It's not to say some of those concerns aren't valid and should be addressed, but it is not generally, I don't think it's a good representation of the quality of service that we provide. And you can take that or leave that. I will say we just started our company retreat today. It's a virtual retreat, and some of the service team was sharing some of the more unusual requests they had gotten. And someone had put in an emergency maintenance request for help to move their Christmas tree. And I said, and then that was the end of it, like that was the end of the discussion. So I emailed the regional manager and I said, I have to know, did we move the Christmas tree? And she said, of course, we look for every opportunity to say yes. And I said, I guarantee you I'm going to tell that story. And she said, our customer service ratings are much higher than all of our comps. I'm trying to get that specific information from her, like what are those comps? I would love to share that. But again, we have a very high level of service. If you need a light bulb change, we'll change it for you. If you need your trash taken to the end of the driveway on trash day, we'll take it out for you. If you need help carrying a big package in from your car into your living room, we will do that for you. We just provide a high level of service, and generally, people are very happy with us. Erin also was concerned that Redwood could accept Section 8 if it wanted to, and it was against the law to forbid Section 8. So those are two different questions and two interesting questions. Could Redwood accept Section 8? Yes, we could. We don't. And what we're talking about is putting language in the annexation amendment that would prohibit us from accepting Section 8 housing so long as such a prohibition was permissible by law. So while we can say yes and do something else, we're going to commit to it in writing in what will be a recorded document. I imagine it's going to be recorded. The annexation agreement is recorded. We're going to commit to that in a recorded document that we are not going to take Section 8 housing. That's not a hard commitment for us to make because that is not our business model. There's nothing wrong with Section 8 housing. It provides a need for people. It provides a solution for people who need that solution, but that's not our business model. As for whether or not that's illegal, we've vetted it with several attorneys. They are comfortable with the language that we've proposed, which does include the language so long as such a prohibition is permissible by law, because neither the city nor Redwood wants to get in a position where we're doing something that is unlawful.
If I could address that, just to explain, any property owner, especially property owner that's going to use the property, cannot discriminate a potential leaseholder based upon protected class, such as race, ethnicity, sex, gender, and so on. And so that is something that's prohibited. Whether or not the property owner accepts Section 8 housing is a business, choice that the owner makes. It's just that once you make that choice, you can't discriminate. I'm going to accept it to this person, but not that person because of their, race, gender, sex, and ethnicity, and the other protected class. So, based upon that, anyone who owns a property, just like a single residential home, can rent a property. They don't have to accept Section 8 housing or voucher or any of the subsidized housing, but they can't discriminate based upon those specific protected reasons. And I believe that language is something that was put into Highlands. And again, it doesn't, Redwood, just like any other property owner, has to comply with the Fair Housing Act and any other state or federal regulations that prohibit discrimination.
So Sonny, what's your feeling then on language that is put in there? Is it useless or is it meaningful? No, hold, I can't hear you. Stop.
Yes, sorry. Yes, it's very useful because it's binding upon the property owners. So the property owner, the developer is agreeing that it will, within the constraints of the, specific regulation, that it would not accept Section 8 housing. And it will comply with their housing regulations, but it will market its property based upon fair market pricing. So no one could force a property owner to accept Section 8 vouchers. People do that for particular reasons, and it could be for economic reasons because you're getting assurance from the government that they will get part of the rent paid, and property owners, based upon their economic situations or the financial situations, will accept that. But the agreement that is being proposed, is something that is not directly saying that, hey, we're gonna, we're not going to, it's stating that they're going to comply with all regulations, and they're going to market their property. So it is very, I believe it's a good provision to put in, and it's binding on both properties, and it's a good assurance to put in that agreement.
Okay. Yeah, so Aaron, please, or Kelly, please continue.
Okay. And then Aaron's last concern was that we would have people living in an apartment that were not on the lease, and there was no way we would know that. That once the application is done and the lease is signed, that we're sort of washed our hands and walked away, and how would we know? But that's, again, it's a difference between what you see in a traditional multifamily housing program and what Redwood offers. So when you're looking at traditional multifamily, right, first you're looking at like 3, 5, 7 up stories, and a lot of times people are building it and flipping it and walking away. Again, we own everything we ever built. Part of the reason that I spend so much time with the neighbors, and it's so important to me to have a neighbor meeting and to go walk a property with a Lago Vista neighbor or our neighbors to the north, is because we're going to be here. If the city approves us, we're going to be here, and we are going to be neighbors. And so it's important to us to start early on working on what those relationships look like. We do have on-site personnel. Everyone who lives in an apartment home must go through the application process if you're over 18. So if you are living in the apartment home, your name appears on the lease and you go through the application process. There have been rare instances that we have our maintenance team or our leasing professionals have found other people living in there. It doesn't happen a lot, but we find them because we are on site. You see the cars that are there. You're going inside the units for regular inspections. You're going inside the apartment homes for maintenance requests. So there is no wiping of the hands and walking away. That's not who we are. That's not our business model. We are property managers. We build high quality, distinctive apartment homes that people rent in because they want to rent. Again, our residents are not people who are forced to rent. These are people that rent by choice. They come from generally within a 3-mile radius of the neighborhood. Their average age is 51. They're tired of paying property taxes. They're tired of mowing the lawn, and they're looking to downsize and understand what that looks like. So it's a little different situation than when you have college apartment homes or even a high rise in an exurb that's not being monitored or maintained and serviced in a way that our neighborhoods are. Ms. Beatty spoke about traffic, which I think I've already addressed. A little bit about property values, which we talked about, and I'm happy to revisit again. It sounds counterintuitive that being next to an apartment neighborhood would not affect your property values, but study after study shows that it does not. It doesn't increase, but it doesn't decrease. It has no effect on property values. Even Section 8 housing, which we don't do, which that was a surprising finding to me as well. The other thing that I would hope would help people get more comfortable is that we don't look like apartments. And again, nothing wrong with that product, but that's not our business model. We look like ranch condominiums. We are 18 feet tall. I say 18 and a half for human error, but the apartment home is 18 feet tall on paper. 2-bedroom, 2-bath, attached 2-car garage, a patio on the back. It looks and it lives like a home. And that, even if, that also goes to how, when you look around, you see it, it's not gonna, there's a hope we would get more comfortable with it. I hope you would get more comfortable with it. And Ms. Beatty also asked a question about age restricted. Why aren't we age restricted? So we don't do age restriction for a good reason. We actually had 2 age restricted neighborhoods, one in Ohio and one, I'm not sure what the second one was, maybe the Carolinas. And they did not rent quickly. It was, they are full of now, they have waiting lists now, but it was a struggle. And it's, you know, our leasing team would talk to these potential residents as they came in, and these are one was in Hudson, Ohio, which if you're familiar with Cleveland, Ohio, it's a very upscale suburb. It was a linking to a bike path out the back, and it was like within a half mile to a mile walk of this great little quaint downtown area. I mean, it looks like this, and you're like, why is the lease slower than we thought it would be? Well, when prospects would come in and chat with our leasing professionals, they would be excited until they found out it was age restricted. And that was the reason they said no. And I don't know how to say this tactfully. The feedback they got was, we're too young to live in age restricted. We are 55, we are 56. We're not old enough to be there, and we want to be with younger people.
May I speak on that?
Yes.
I can say that you are 100% correct. When I have clients that are looking, you know, for subdivisions, and I mention at 55 and older, they're like, oh, we're not old enough for that. I'm like, oh no, it's really a young community, and they really do shy away from that. So you do really limit your prospective clients when you earmark it 55 and older.
So we don't do age restricted anymore. It's not an effective business model for us. We are FHA compliant in all our rental practices. If you meet the criteria, we will rent to you. We build apartments in a way that makes them attractive to empty nesters. It's an open floor plan, second bedrooms off the kitchen, not great for kids, first bedrooms off the living room, all single story, big open spaces, tall ceilings. So the main living bedrooms are off the main living spaces. So not great for kids trying to go to sleep, kids trying to do homework, things like that. We are zero entry from the garage to the kitchen when you come in. Our doorknobs are levers. Our handles are levers. They're not knobs. So everything's ADA compliant inside. So we build in a way that's attractive to an empty nester, and that is who our audience is. 70% of our renters are empty nesters. So we're not age restricted, but we have a sense of who we are. And again, this is very consistent information. I started 5 years ago with Redwood, and 70% of our residents were empty nesters then, and 70% of our renters are empty nesters now. It's just very consistent demographic. Mr. Donahue talked about the Highlands being nearly empty. We visited on that already. And a little bit, he talked a little bit about what is the benefit to the taxpayer. I can't say that I'm going to change anyone's individual income taxes, but we will be paying property taxes on the homes. I think we're estimating that the property tax bill is going to be like $3,100, $3,900 a unit. I have to check on that. So we'll be paying taxes, and so real estate taxes, and then income taxes, of course, from our residents.
So I think I had maybe 2 more questions that I think would be good for you to answer.
Yes.
Vehicles on the street, how is that working? I believe I saw, Lance, there was some parking elsewhere. How does that work?
So there are, and Kelly can elaborate it, but they have in some of their common areas, like around the park that's in the middle of the development, there are some parking spaces that are, off of the street that people can use, or where the bike path gets close to the road edge. Someone could park there and be able to access the path if they want to get on it somewhere else. But just like anywhere else in the city, on-street overnight parking is not allowed. So there are 2 spaces in the garage and 2 spaces in the driveway, just like every other single-family community we have.
Okay.
Even if these streets are private streets, and if that's one of the conditions of the development plan, we can always negotiate an agreement and require that the property owners or the developer prohibit on-street parking, overnight on-street parking, nearing the city ordinance prohibiting overnight on-street parking.
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess the last one I had was, you had already answered, it was about keeping track of who was in the units, so you actually addressed it. Was there anything else that you saw, Kelly, we have some other questions about, I think that are more geared towards, the water and these kinds of things and screening, but, probably Lance would be better to jump in with those, but were there any other things that you felt specifically about Redwood that you wanted to address that you heard?
No, I did want to say that we actually do prohibit on-street parking. It's in the lease. If you park on the street, we'll just have you towed right in the lease, so you agree to it up front. There is no on-street parking. Lacey mentioned 2 in the garage, 2 in the driveway, and guest parking as well. No, I think Mr. Casto's comments went to how we manage our properties. The underlying concern was how could you manage the properties to make sure the things that you say are going to happen. I think we talked about that. And Ms. Opie, I'm sorry I didn't catch the first or last name, had some of the same concerns there. So I hope that we've addressed everyone's concerns at this point.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could ask, I'd like Brent to talk about the traffic in the sewer and the water retention ponds and that kind of stuff too, some of the engineering concerns.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Kelly. Brent, if you can, I know you're on mute, so I'll have to unmute yourself.
Should we ask the questions first before we get into the sewer and water and sewer, or no?
I have a question, Kelly.
Yeah, we can go any way you like. We were just trying to get the answers from the petitioners, and then
Dude.
you're certainly welcome to take all the questions from
I'm
each
gonna
one of the
hear it
council
out.
members and then retort again, but however you want to proceed here.
These folks need to understand what our concerns are so they address it over the next few months, not when they come back in preliminary, especially if preliminary and final are going to be
They've heard
merged.
it. We heard all the questions. Okay, all this stuff could be written down. We've heard it all, okay? Now we're getting into the realm of preliminary. We're getting in the realm of engineering studies, okay? This is concept. This is not preliminary.
Darren, run for mayor and run the meeting. At the moment, I'm going to run the meeting. Brent, if you can address water and sewer and runoff, please.
Sure. If anybody can't hear me, let me know. I'm speaking, through my iPad here.
No,
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm only kidding.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sanitary sewer. So the first question that I heard was sanitary sewer. Across the city, I'll just briefly say, across the city, we had a number of sanitary sewer concerns this past weekend. We had, again, as the mayor pointed out, we had another 100-year event that seems to happen every year. We are now, we have a record May rainfall, record in Illinois for the most rain that's ever occurred. This is the 3rd straight May that we've been able to break that record. Hopefully we can end that next year. But the reason I bring that up is the sanitary sewer is intended for sanitary. It is intended for showers. It is intended for toilets. It is intended for sanitary flow. And so in a sanitary flow condition, which is what we would have evaluate any new development on, there is adequate capacity. The sanitary sewer backs up when there is storm sewer getting into sanitary sewer, and that happens in a number of ways, and we can talk about that at a later date. But short answer is there is adequate sanitary capacity for this development or for any other development on this property in the 140 unit consideration, which we've been proposed here this evening. As far as water main goes, water main is in the exact same situation. Water main in the region, we have capacity, we have appropriate pressure, we have appropriate main in this area, so we do have the adequate facilities to service any development, whether it is, again, whether it is this specific development or another that is very similar in size and scope. So as far as utilities go, that should not be a concern for the city. Road access.
Do me one favor. Can you reach out to Sandy to the south sometime over the next couple weeks and try to understand why she would be having problems? And then I know it's unincorporated, but I want to understand too that it's not something endemic to the area, and so it would help me understand a little bit better too.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And I would encourage anybody who is listening, the only way that we know that we have an issue is when we get the phone calls or the emails. So as everybody can probably imagine, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, even into today, we did receive quite a few calls, and we go out and we do our investigation on each of those. So we'll absolutely do that, Mayor, to ensure that there are no issues on the line that goes that Sandy mentioned, basically from Farrell east and west over to Lago, between Lago and Broken Arrow. So as far as the road access is something that we've been trying to discuss across the city. We have a lot of roadways now that are on, I'll call them kind of the outskirts of town. You know, a lot of the development that's been done in town over the years has filled in the areas that are on grids. When I say grids, the local roads that are, 16th, 18th, Sisson, those types of roadways. So now we're getting out and we're expanding as a city, and we're getting to 151st Street, to Farrell, 163rd Division. We're getting more into these roadways that really traffic mobility, flow, getting cars from point A to point B is a lot of the main concern that the city has, that the engineering department, that development that we're looking for is safe travel for all motorists. So in this particular instance, we've gone around and around with the concept, and whether it's one access or two access points. I've heard congestion over and over this evening, and Farrell Road is getting more and more traffic by the day. I would absolutely agree with that. Adding access points out of this development will negatively impact congestion. I know that's difficult to hear, and I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but Farrell Road, the way to keep Farrell Road moving is to line up the access as we've done with Broken Arrow. And if a traffic signal is warranted, then a traffic signal is the way to control that access. By adding continuous access or a secondary access, what you're doing is you're creating another conflict point. And what you're doing is essentially you're slowing the traffic down on Farrell and making the motorists have to look at more locations. So while I understand the concerns about accessing the subdivisions, we have provided a secondary emergency access. I think, as everybody's mentioned, Mayor, you've made it very clear, this is a concept plan, and we're here to talk about this, I think, and figure out what works best for everybody. But again, based on a concept where engineering department has not seen a traffic study, and this is nothing against Redwood or nothing against anybody, this is concept. So at this point, we are just looking at this thing from a very high view, and this is the engineering department's recommendation. So our recommendation is to try to line up the entrance. If a signal is warranted, deceleration lanes to get traffic out of Farrell Road, to get it off into a right turn lane, a left turn lane. I will be the first one to say that some of the previous subdivisions, Thunder Hill comes to mind, that is a very difficult access point. The sight distance is incredibly difficult. There is no turn lane, there is no deceleration lane. And so I think what we've done is we've had a few of these very poorly designed and installed entrances over the years. And so now we're shying away from single access, and I don't know that that's necessarily the best thing across the city. There's certainly going to be times when we need multiple access points, but when I hear tonight congestion, multiple access points will not help the congestion. A single access point designed appropriately with the appropriate deceleration lanes and a traffic signal, if warranted, is the way to appropriately address it. And most importantly, I think the safety is the most important. So I just want to kind of throw that out there.
I'm not a traffic engineer, so whether
sure.
So I could default to you and say, one is enough, and that's fine. But I got some other thoughts that we could talk about. So,
and that's why I mentioned this is conceptually. So we're looking at this thing just as a concept right now, and Lance made that clear too.
I just don't want to make the same mistake for the single access. So we could talk about it more. So
sure. Okay.
All right.
From a utility, and then the only other one that I heard was the storm sewer. I think the frequencies that, and I apologize, I do not recall the gentleman that asked those, but just across the board, these are just standard rules that the Will County Stormwater Ordinance requires, which the city of Lockport also follows. Storm sewer is designed for 10-year storms, which means in a 10-year rain event, the water will be contained within the storm sewer.
Okay.
The detention ponds, so the actual basins, which you see in Broken Arrow, those are designed for the 100-year event. So that means that in a 100-year event, so the rain that we received over the weekend, all of the water should stay contained in there if it's sized appropriately. It should not overtop the banks. So I know there's been a lot of concern out there about what the detention is going to be. And Mayor, I don't know if you wanted to mention this, but we have worked with Redwood, and they are going to provide that additional capacity for detention. That Broken Arrow is short right now, about 3 acre-feet, which, just to put it into perspective, the existing Broken Arrow detention pond is 6 acre-feet. It's about 3 acre-feet short, which means it needs 50% more capacity that will be made up on the Redwood development.
Okay. All right. So we'll just be clear as we move forward, talking about this over the next couple of weeks. Our expectations then are the flooding coming out of the Broken Arrow has to be addressed. We have to deal with the flooding that runs off the field now into Lago Vista. That's going to have to be dealt with. I guess another thing too, I'd like to see the conversations continue with Kelly and yourselves over the next couple of weeks is just looking at about screening, how neighbors next door are looking for, whether it's fencing or shrubbery, these kinds of things. I think Kelly's been very open to having conversations with the neighbors, which is appreciated. So that dialogue with Sandy, Maureen, and Peter, and I know Tony came in from Lago and was, had some requests. So appreciate those kind of interactions that they continue. So those things will be important here as we move forward. Okay.
Absolutely.
So why don't we go through council concerns? And as I said, what I'd like to do is just talk one at a time. If you guys, somebody says something that you want to rebut, just write it down, come back to it when it's your turn. I don't want any talking over one another, So, Catherine, do you want to go first?
Sure.
He's gonna get a drink.
Can you guys hear me? So I have a few comments and concerns. I know, Brent, you just said one entrance is recommended with the, I guess you'd call it the rope-off second entrance for an emergency. I did have a resident who told me on December of 2017, they had a car accident where her husband was basically rear-ended, trying to turn into Broken Arrow, coming from the north heading south by another resident, not a resident of Broken Arrow, but just someone coming down Farrell, and 2 cars were totaled there. Cheryl basically told me that it was about an hour to clean up that mess. So that's what concerns me about having only one entrance. Now, that happened in the evening. However, if that had happened in the day, that would be a lot of buses that could not get through, a lot of other vehicles, parents that get nervous when they have to pick their kid up and drive them to different activities. So that's my concern with one entrance being there, because accidents do happen, and I happen to live at Thunder Hill, and that gives me high anxiety of, there are times when those entrances are blocked. We just had it this week too. People are blocking it because they want to do construction or work coming in. And so it's hard to get around that. We have a bad blind spot, but it's also, the traffic is increasing tremendously on Farrell, especially when the buses are in there. I know Broken Arrow has maybe 9 buses that come through between a kindergarten bus and a grade school bus, because we've got a separate bus for kindergarten, a separate bus for 1st through 4th, a separate bus for 5th through 8th, and then you've got high school buses. You've got Providence has a bus, you've got after-school buses. It's a lot of buses that come through. So for me, having them 2 line up and just the probability of having an accident there is pretty big for me. So I don't know what the procedure would be if you have that emergency thing then for across the street, but who would be responsible for that? Is that the police going to remove it as soon as there's an accident? There should be designated people then to remove that, because that's a concern for me.
Catherine, can I just
Yeah.
respond to that? Just very quickly. I think you brought up a perfect point regarding that accident, and one of the frustrating things as an engineer that I've seen on this particular Broken Arrow entrance is there should have been a turn lane. So the southbound to eastbound movement that you're talking about, where that accident occurred, should have never occurred. I say should have. More than likely would not have occurred if there would have been a turn lane that would have been added when Farrell Road was done. So again, I always caveat this with, we need to look at these things and put in the appropriate improvements to make them safe. Because if you're just trying to reduce cost for a developer, that's not the way to do it. Safety, 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 and do it correctly. So I just want to throw that out there, that I think that probably was the reason for the accident, was there was no turn lane. But I certainly understand, and again, this is recommendation, it's just some talking points, and we can certainly talk more about multiple accesses as we proceed.
Okay, because you'd probably have to have a whole bunch of turn lanes,
Not to
deceleration.
discount the accident, Catherine, is that the one accident then you can note? 'Cause I've lived here for 20 years. I've driven in and out of Broken Arrow probably 4 times. My son did lessons there. I golfed there several times a day. I've gone in and out probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I've never had.
That is just one resident that reached out to me to tell me about that accident.
They were actually the maiden children to go to Butler. So I've been through all phases of it.
What else you got, Kathy?
Okay, so, and that was just a resident who had responded with that one. The question I have next with is the Redwoods plans, since we haven't really gone over them, but the length of the driveway. The reason I'm bringing that up, some of the plans show that they're 22 feet and some of them show that they're 20 feet. I have had a problem over the years with complaints, especially by Peachtree and Strawberry, where the cars overextend the sidewalks. And so now you've got trucks and vehicles that are 20 feet or larger. And so I would just like to see that all the driveways are at least 22 feet and not some of them being 20 feet. I think they should be a little longer. So that would be one of my concerns on there. I know you said, Kelly, that there's no on-street parking. And so I'm seeing some sidewalk, maybe I'm wrong. We haven't gone into such details then on your concept plan, but when I looked at it, I thought I did see sidewalks in the front in certain areas, but not all. And then I did have a question with this concept plan when I was looking at it. I might be mistaken, but are there alleys that run through the middle? I don't know exactly what that was, so I wasn't sure what that was when I was looking at it. And then what are the rules for the rentals? I know when you have HOAs, you've got certain rules, but can people put up trampolines, leave play toys outside, fences for dogs? I know you've got your privacy fences in the back of your buildings, but my question would be, do we have rules for that? And what are the rules? Because if you do have a bike path along that, I think that's taking away some of the privacy of the renters. And so I'd also like to know what the rules are of Redwood. I don't know what they are. I don't know if you want to address that now, Kelly, or as I go on.
If I could address regarding any accessory structure or trampolines, these are single-family units. They would comply with any other regulations and zoning regulations regarding accessory use, temporary use, that any other single-family property would have to comply with. As to whether there's additional, more restrictive restriction, I'm sure Kelly can address that.
Sure, yes. Did you want to go through all your concerns?
Well,
and have me address them
you
all,
could,
or do you want me to do
you
the
could,
ones you've addressed so
yeah,
far? How would you like me to handle it?
you could answer that one, only because I'm thinking some of these rental units will back up to Lago Vista, so I just wanted to know kind of how the uses of the backyards could be perceived. It doesn't seem like they, you can go on, I'm sorry.
No. Generally, you can have patio furniture on your back patio and not anything in the green space around it. I can send to Lance a copy of our lease addendum. It's pretty strict. Our lease addendum actually does not, our standard lease addendum actually does not allow biking in the community, because what we do is we promote peace, quiet, and comfort, and that keeps things quieter, right? Plus, we have we have the no on-street parking and those sorts of things as well. So, in our neighborhood in Lockport, we're going to allow biking through the neighborhood. Of course, we're going to change our standard lease to allow that, particularly with the bike path going through there. But that just gives you an idea of how strictly we maintain that peace and quiet. But I will send a copy of the addendum to Lance, and then you'll be able to see all the rules and restrictions that go into our standard lease addendum.
The next question I have is, where would your mailboxes be? Are they per each house, or is there like with an apartment where there's a standard location of mailboxes?
There's a mail kiosk up front near the leasing office. We find that more and more post offices do not want to do in bigger neighborhoods, even in subdivisions, single-family subdivisions. They don't want to do the house-to-house delivery if they don't have to, right? It's a lot more labor and time. So generally, the United States, the USPS requires us to do the mail kiosk up front. It is ADA compliant, so it's sized for the neighborhood, and it's ADA compliant so that everyone.
So then there's just a couple parking spaces up there for that, or do you know how many parking spaces are for that?
I actually, 1 second, I can't look at the screen right now. Let me take a quick look.
It's fine. I do have a question then also for us. Maybe it's more Brent and staff too. We had discussed that the electrical boxes will be potentially, ComEd wants them in the front yard. We have them currently in the backyard.
What is your concern about these mailboxes? What is your real concern?
What is my concern? I just want to know where they're going to be at. I mean, we haven't gone over this, and then also, in case in the future they were converted to single.
Where's your mailbox?
Renee, I asked you to just make a note and say it. I'm sure Catherine's going to wrap up here soon. We can ask the question.
So I just wanted to go over, going back to this point with the electrical boxes in the front yards. I know we were discussing it. I don't know if your plans have that in detail. Maybe we've added that to tell them. We were going to talk about that in July is what it was changed to. So I want to know if that would change how you design your plans. The city was just trying to decide with ComEd on those issues. So I just wanted to make sure that would be addressed.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is for mailboxes, final location of trails, sidewalks, width of driveways, length of driveways, we're not even close to the point where we're looking at that much detail. At this level, we're looking at general street layout, general home locations, home types as they relate to the street itself, general locations of stormwater, things like that. We will absolutely be getting to that level during preliminary and final, but a lot of this kind of stuff we just haven't even started to discuss. And that's really typical across any development project that we do. Like MI Homes, we have, at the concept level, we have no clue where those things are.
So I guess the bottom line is, Catherine, aside from the kind of bigger picture things, is there anything else you've got?
So then there was just one thing I wanted then to make sure that Kelly has. Lance had recently given us the Ketchner and Associates study with the Will County market analysis. Can you forward that to her? Because her numbers might be a little different than what Will County is projecting them at.
Sure.
So Kelly, you can read that. It's kind of starts out on page 45. It does say, just so you know, average rent is about $967, a little higher if you add in Romeoville and Bolingbrook, $1122, and that is using 4,472 apartments in the Will County area. Of those 4,472 apartments, only 3% of those units are over $2,000 a month.
Great, I'd like to read it, thank you.
All right, thank you. Renee, please.
Never mind, I'm done.
Okay. Does anybody else have something? Just kind of raise your hand.
There.
Yeah, Mark, please. Yep, unmute.
I think I was able to unmute myself. First off, a couple of things that I've heard tonight. I do want to say to city staff, out of the mayor, to Ben, to Lance, to Sonny, to everyone that's been involved in this, that you have done a superb job in bringing the facts and the data to the actual public, trying to suppress the rumors and the unfortunate falsehoods that have come about due to this development. The first thing I would like to touch upon is that we have suddenly had two new items come up tonight from residents, or actually from an unincorporated resident who has indicated that we're going to fast track. And first of all, that is 100% false. When you enter preliminary and final, based upon this process, you are not fast tracking. You are following code. We have been given voluminous amounts of data and facts based upon this development. So to call this fast tracking is an incorrect statement. Second, as an educator for 19 years, and as someone who has to work with students firsthand in their lab and in their classroom, to work on active shooter, to bring active shooter into this discussion is abhorrent, disturbing, and disgusting. That should not be a part of this discussion. None of you have had to deal with students in an active shooter drill or an active shooter discussion. And to bring this up during a higher end residential rental development conversation, to me, as an educator, is disturbing. And to those that brought this up, you owe us all an apology. You owe me as an educator an apology. You owe the council an apology for using that as an example for your reasons to delay this development. And I await your apology.
Mark, I appreciate your passion. This is part of the job, man, is
I understand as part of the job. However, when an individual crosses that boundary, it hits me personally and any educator personally. And so I believe that should be addressed in the future as an apology. Second, I have seen all the facts. I have seen all the information. As someone who deals directly with property managers as an HOA president for the past 11 years, I understand what is needed to be a property manager. In my townhome development, we have approximately 20% to 25% of our townhomes are considered rentals, where they are subleased with an agreement where they still abide by city code, they still abide by the Towns of Cedar Ridge rules and regulations. However, that's at a lower rental point than what we're gonna have for Redwood. So anyone that would insinuate that this is gonna be low income, Section 8, that is just not possible. The other point I would like to raise is the individuals that live to the north and the individuals that live to the south, their properties were purchased after 2004. They've admitted that they understood the zoning of R2 for this property. So if we as a city allow them to make recommendations for screening, for berms, it is also on that property owner to realize that they may need to put screens or berms up on their own property if they feel that the property north or to the south or to the east of them is not what they prefer. So I don't wish to take up any more time of the council. We've spent 2.5 hours on this already for committee of the whole. But again, I believe that this is a solid proposal. This is a proposal that would be a benefit. And this is a proposal where we have been able again and again, whether it's Zoom meetings, whether it's open meetings with the mayor, whether it's communications with the aldermen, this is a proposal that is solid. And for those that live in Broken Arrow, nobody has ever come forward to me about the increase in 33C student population with our unanimous approvals for those housing developments. The only item you've indicated as being concerning is something across the street that might be Section 8, which we've already told you factually that it will be not. And so what I want to do is I want to challenge everyone involved in this conversation going forward. Represent the facts, represent the data, represent the information in front of you. Because if you're not able to do that, you are simply part of the problem. And I am someone who wishes to be part of the solution and moving Lockport forward. I don't wish to dwell in the past, and I don't wish to dwell on rumor mill. I wish to move the city forward. I am in support of this development. I am in support of what I've seen so far with the staff report, and I am in support of what the mayor has done. I'm in support of what the village manager has done. I'm in support of what the village attorney has done, and I'm in full of support of what I've seen from Lance in terms of the detailed information provided to everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mark. Who else? JR?
Yeah, it's my 5 minutes, so.
Mine is a really short question, and it's to Kelly. Is it worth the 19 apartments for the headache, for all these headaches? What was the logic jumping from the 140
They're
to the
gonna-
159.
The road infrastructure, they're gonna actually help Sonny, you can take it.
Like, what are some of the asks on our behalf for the extra 19 units?
If the developer, the applicant came back with the final plan, the city will be bound by the annexation agreement to approve that the final plan as long as it complied substantially with the preliminary plan, which it does even at the concept level at this point. So what the city would be getting is the developer would obviously have to do the improvement to Farrell, put in the turn lane, the center lane, and also the stormwater issue across the street at Broken Arrow. What the annexation agreement doesn't address is some of the buffering, the mitigation that the city can negotiate, and that's part of what the city can do. If the concept plan is approved, the annexation agreement would have to be amended. Once the annexation agreement is open to negotiation, that's when the city can put in provisions such as buffering to the property to the south, the property to the north. There is, provisions, that we can negotiate regarding putting in, if it warrants traffic and traffic signal that the owner would have to pay for, they could, kind of spread that cost through recapture agreement to the adjoining property owner. So it actually benefits the surrounding property owners if we did open up the annexation agreement, because with the straight 140 units, we are bound to agree to prove what the 140 units come with in the annexation agreement, which is bare bone minimum, you get the turn lane, you get the center lane, but it's not up to code. If the annexation was amended, we can ask for a little bit more of a right of way, a little bit more of, other provisions that we could ask. So that's the give and take of, the extra 19 unit. I would think that economically, that's what they were forecasting would be, an amount that they want, that it's good for them economically to develop the property. So they could say, hey, forget the extra 19 units. We're going to come back with the, with the 140 units. But I believe that they want to be good neighbors. I believe that they want to try to address some of the issues, and they want to alleviate some of the flooding. So I think they're coming in wanting to kind of address the issue. They could have came back, with just a final plan, but they're coming back with the concept. So at least from the staff perspective, that's something that we want to, we want to make sure that if they are getting the 19 units, the city gets some type of mitigation, buffering, and all the other things that we can ask the developer to put in.
Anyone else?
Yes, I just have a few questions, please. So this is probably directed more to Kelly. Your term of your leases, it's kind of a little hard to understand. You have some month to month, and then you have your leases. The month to month, what, other than, if the lease expires until that person or the development or the complex decides on whether or not to renew another lease, what other reason would you have a month-to-month lease?
No reason. That is the only instance in which we use them.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If a transferee came in and needed short-term lease, do you offer that?
Not generally. I can't say we've never done it before. We do have a 6-month lease that occasionally we have used. Again, usually the 6-month lease is an extension of the month-to-month. There's less of a financial penalty for the 6-month lease versus when you end up your lease, you go month-to-month.
So are they
have we ever done it? Yes, but that's not our standard.
Okay, so it is a 12-month lease that you offer? Okay, and I'm assuming that just like all other rental complexes, that you do have an application where it actually indicates how many people will be living in the unit. And if you should find that there's more people that was originally indicated on the application, what kind of enforcement do you have? I know that you'll probably have some kind of rules and regulations enforcing your leases. However, how will you handle should you find or someone complains that there's more things going on in one unit than there should be?
I'd have to check with operations to get you the exact answer. I don't know that it's our habit to evict the people who are on the lease. Certainly the people who are not on the lease cannot stay. You have to, if you're over 18 and you're going to live in the unit, the apartment home, your name must appear on the lease, and everyone who's on the lease has to go through the approval process. So if someone is living in the apartment home and is not on the lease and they're over 18, they would be asked to leave. Whether the resident is evicted, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to find out. I'd have to ask operations.
Well, actually, it's not so much of the person on the lease, because they have every right to be there because they've signed the lease. Yeah. I guess it's the visitors, let's put them as visitors, that should not be there because of perhaps they're a little bit out of control for whatever reason. How would you handle that? I mean, is it something that you have the ability to enforce? Would you have to call the police department? What is the the norm for that?
Well, I don't think there is a norm for that. That's generally not who our residents are, so there's no norm.
Kelly, if I could address that part, for owner-occupied property, really, you really can't prevent someone from staying overnight or having someone live there
right, and
longer.
that's not what.
So one thing that, as the mayor alluded to and stated earlier before we, when we had this whole presentation on this case. Now, the city, as we discussed earlier, is contemplating a responsible, landlord lease agreement regulations. So that's something that provides the mechanism that you are asking for, which is that if a tenant, has an overnight guest or someone that is not on their lease and they violate or they commit a criminal offense, that actually triggers the mechanism for the city to send a notice out saying, your tenant, your guest, committed this type of crime as a property owner, which Redwood states that they're the property owner for all these units. They have the obligation to abate that nuisance, that person, that overnight guest that commits a criminal offense. And that could be, one of the remedies could be that you evict you start the eviction process of the tenant or the the lessee. So there's a mechanism in place once we pass that ordinance. Now, if you're talking about a owner-occupied property, there is no mechanism set in place. If you own your house, you could have an overnight guest, you could have, a family member who deals drugs, who commits crime. There's no mechanism for the city to abate that violation because you are a home owner. So as a tenant, as a lease, lessee, you have less of a right to that, to occupy that property. So in essence, it's, we have better control once, we do pass that ordinance to be able to address that. So I think a lot of that, questioning about, well, if I rented to my boyfriend and they didn't do a background check and he ended up dealing, committing a crime or attempted a crime, well, what's to prevent, anyone from, doing anything about it? Well, if we did have that responsible landlord ordinance in place, there is something the city can do about it.
Okay. Very
Sorry
good.
to interject, but just to.
No, and that's what I think I needed to hear, as well as everyone else needs to hear this also, you know, because that is obviously a concern. You know, when you have rentals, people are concerned about, you know, who's going to be there and how is someone who's causing trouble, it's going to be handled. So, let's see, I'm trying to think of what else I had here. I apologize. Yeah, my other concern is just to really, you know, think about how we can safely come in and out of that subdivision and the least amount of impact, you know, to Farrell Road with Broken Arrow coming out in the same direction. You know, those are all concerns and legitimate concerns to residents that will be there. So, and I know that it will be, you know, handled the best that it can be. But I think, you know, everyone just needs to be kept abreast and have open communication, because the more people ask questions and if we're able to answer them, obviously people are going to feel more comfortable. Perhaps not. You know, not everybody's in favor of rentals, and you know, we all understand that. But it sounds like, you know, if Redwood has their act together, as you say, the developers do. I hope that that's how it really will come out for everyone.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Anyone else? Okay, then why don't we put it on as an action item for our next meeting, and everybody good with that? Okay, all right, thank you all for your patience, and move on to our next item on the agenda.
5-minute break, Mayor, or?
Yeah, you guys want to take 5? That's fine.
Yes, please.
All right, we'll take 5. Thanks.
Yeah, where's everybody else? Renee's missing, Christina's the Pope.
All right, crew. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And Larry's iPad.
It had to be more than 5 minutes.
All right. I think everybody's here. All right. Everybody back ready to roll? Why don't we go ahead and talk about the CA1, the City of Lockport reopening, local economy plan. I don't know if I've got some slides to put up. Hold on a second. Hey, Lance, do you have the ability to put those slides up for the recovery plan? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we got them queued up.
Okay. So, just want to talk a little bit about this. Obviously, you know, there's been so much anxiety and turmoil in the state here with, you know, the COVID-19 and how it's been handled and when things are reopening. And when the governor released his Restore Illinois plan like a week and a half ago, you know, it caused a lot of questions about how this is going to play out. So one of the things that was important to us here, and I know I've talked to a number of the council members about this, is how do we prepare now for the next phase? How do we help businesses and our residents as reopening comes? So that's kind of what we have here. I know we guys had a draft to look at this plan. It's recommendations for how, you know, social distancing, how certain kinds of businesses should operate. So two things in mind before we reopen and until we get to that plan. So Lance, if you can go to the next slide. So first thing is, and I've said this publicly, you know, recovery, and as we move forward, there's two sides of the same coin. There's, you know, health and safety, which is absolutely important, and how we keep our economy moving, because you can't function, you know, a healthcare system and taking care of people if we have no money and everyone's broke and people lost their businesses. We have to do this together. So on the one side, for health and safety, we know what the numbers tell us. We know the numbers tell us if you're over 60, if you're pre-existing medical conditions, you're really the people that are going to have most chance of being hospitalized or even suffering fatalities. So instead of, you know, looking at everybody in the same statistic, let's deal with what we know. So we started Lockport Shield. Shield is going to be a group of volunteers. I already have 57 volunteers. They signed up since I announced this the other day. I did it on Friday. These are folks that are willing to take care of our most vulnerable citizens. So if you're in that age group, or if you have a pre-existing medical condition, or quite frankly, if you're just scared and you need to keep sheltering in for whatever reason, just, we have your name, that's all we need. And then whatever your needs are. If you need your groceries run, if you need your grass cut, if you need simple errands done, that's what these volunteers are here to help with. So that way, those who are most vulnerable can continue to stay sheltered in and can make sure we're taking care of those folks. And we'll keep that curve bent. That's what this whole plan always was not to overwhelm the healthcare system. So that's on the one side. Lance, if you can go to the next slide. So now is the reopening guidelines. So now let's look at the other side of that coin, and that is how do we help businesses as we move forward. The guidelines that we put together are, you know, we're taken from a number of things. There was a CDC and the White House guidelines for opening up America again, the National Coronavirus Response, a roadmap to reopening. It was made up of a number of doctors. So we took information from them and we helped it be incorporated into this plan. So that's what this is based off of. You guys have all had a chance to look at it. If you guys have comments or questions about, you know, tweaking it, that's what we're going to do here. What I'd like to do is have this in place before May 31st. If all goes well, we should be released into the governor's phase 3 that means we can be, have this ready to go before that time. So we will look at a special meeting just to make sure that we can vote on this so that we can get it done before then. I've had the Chamber of Commerce look at it too, give their input. I don't want to just rely only on the medical doctors that help with this, but also it needs to be a collaboration. So we're expecting feedback from them. Does anybody have any questions about the plan as we've put forth in this draft form? Good, okay. If we can go to the next slide, Lance. So we'll do council discussion again, like I said, business community input, and if we can get it approved before May 31st, I think we can be ready to go. And I can't remember, there's one more slide. Or is that everything? Oh, a couple things too. Everybody needs to understand, it's the recommendations that we're putting together, they're just that. They're guidelines, they're recommendations. We're not here to tell a business that this is what you have to do. It's voluntary. But if you end up if you choose to follow these guidelines as they're laid out in here, my suggestion is that, I can make this little 8-inch sticker. It says, "This business follows City of Lockport reopening guidelines." A business owner can put that on the window, so that way people know that, okay, this person is doing the recommended things, of social distancing, of wiping down the tables or the gym equipment, whatever it is that pertains to that particular business. Another thing that has become kind of this bizarre to me, but this hot topic of masks, right, is like some businesses are like, I'm not making anybody wear masks. Other businesses want people to wear masks. And here's the thing. We're not telling you have to wear them, but if you're a private business and you want people to wear masks in your business, you have a right to do so. So you can put that other sticker, "Mask required, thank you," on your window as well. This way we don't have a bunch of big cardboard signs and fat Sharpie marker that say in all caps, "Masks required," because it just immediately becomes confrontational. So this is a nice way of letting any resident know before they go into a business what guidelines, if you're following them, and if masks are required. And if you don't want to go in because the stickers aren't there, then don't do so. It's your prerogative. As far as the city goes, as people who, end up doing things in violation, if it comes to do with any of the governor's orders, it's just a matter of, getting a notification that says, hey, just FYI, you're in violation of, the governor's standing orders at the moment, and that's it. So we want to be as cooperative and helpful as possible as we move forward to make sure, and to put as many safety measures as we can in. But again, they are voluntary. And I think there's one more slide.
Mayor, if I could just interject a couple of things that the city can do creatively. So, for instance, with the announcement that Governor Christopher is going to allow outdoor dining, we can pass a resolution to suspend some of the restrictions on the use of, like, the parking lot or private property adjacent to an establishment, so that the business owners for restaurants or bars can put in seating and so expand their outdoor dining premises. I know I spoke to you regarding your authority as a local liquor commissioner. You can suspend some of the restrictions, allow mixed cocktail outside of a restaurant, and as long as they're not carrying it in their car. But those type of creative things that we can do. As far as your authority as a liquor commissioner, you can do it without the consent or approval of the city council. Some of the zoning regulations regarding using of a private property or parking lot does require a resolution suspending the enforcement of some of the zoning regulations. So if we do have a special meeting, I would recommend the resolution that will temporarily suspend that enforcement. Sort of like what we did for the mobile food truck that we did last year.
Okay, yes, and if there's no objection to that, if you could draft something like that up, I think doing some extraordinary things to get through this to help our businesses as much as possible will be important.
May I chime in on that for a second?
Please.
Thank you, Sonny. And I know State Street is a state road, but is there any way that, yeah, we can kind of temporarily close it down? Like I know some of the smaller towns are doing that so that the restaurants can expand their outdoor seating a little bit.
I believe we could maybe
can't
not
close
State Street.
We can do by resolution, like for canal days, I think for temporary, as long as they allow it.
Like the parking area, I don't know, I'm just trying to devise ways that they can't survive on just coming back 25% or 15%. But
We
could
did-
help them come back.
We're talking about maybe 10th Street from the corner up to maybe like where the Moose or the alleyway starts, like that could be an area. Ben, we already asked him to get some outdoor picnic benches that we could set up in these places. I noticed a lot of people eating their takeout along the canal Saturday. It was a beautiful day. So putting some of these benches, or rather these tables out on the landing, out by the scale house to encourage folks to do it. As Sunny mentioned, if you want to do things like as far as like alcoholic beverages, as long as they're with nearby, that can happen. So we may have to think a little bit better about how to help. And this can go for Coombs Corners, it can go for Papa Joe's in their new location. So I think giving those opportunities for the businesses fall in line with where we're going.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Please.
When is the police station conference room going to open? We have our HOA meeting there.
That would be a question for the chief. I imagine you can meet there right now as long as there's not more than 10 people, but.
There would be.
Okay. So I guess in the meantime, it's still.
You'll just get a placard that says you're in violation of the governor's rules, and you just have your meeting.
We'll give you the note that says you're in
Easy.
violation. I mean, ultimately, I think we're adults, and we can make decisions. If people feel unsafe, they won't come, right? And so.
I mean, I could say, after, June 1st, we can have our meeting.
Oh, yeah.
We're to the point.
According to
where
our
we've
reopening plan, it was after June 6th. That's
Okay,
the
that
current
could do
recommendation,
June 6th then.
up to 50 people.
Because we've delayed our board elections for 3 months already.
Okay.
And just want to know when it's available. But thank
So,
you.
my
I'll go June 6th.
My question is, okay, I'd rather go ahead and get this special meeting sooner rather than later, okay? I would hope that whomever is going to make amendments to this can go ahead and get this to us tomorrow, which means it's posted at, say, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. That means we could all meet at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. We could do this via video and get it done and open up on Sunday.
Well, I don't have a problem. I think giving a deadline for any input is a good idea, Darren. So if if we ask for input before Friday, let's talk. What days you got into it? We can get input for Friday. That gives the opportunity to get it integrated, and then we have a special meeting on Monday.
It's Memorial Day.
Is Monday Memorial Day?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
What I can say is that I will get an order drafted for the mayor to sign regarding the suspension of alcoholic beverages outside of the premises for, near outdoor by tomorrow. So that will open up the doors for the restaurants with their liquor license to be able to sell. Obviously, the patron would have to go inside the restaurant and purchase the, mixed alcohol or beer with the, service of meal. They could take it outside and eat it in the patio area if the establishment has it, or the city, or the sitting area. So that can be done immediately.
Okay.
So the only issue is regarding the non-liquor license holders on their ability to expand their outdoor location.
Okay. So meetings need 48 hours notice.
We still need to address the June 5th because with the governor's thing it says, okay, it's May 31st.
Yeah,
Okay,
I agree. So it needs to happen before that.
It happen before May 29th.
We
and
had
so-
if I could just speak a little bit about the history. So we had put this on the agenda as information at this point, and we were looking for direction from the council on how to proceed. we could approve it on June 3rd, that was the original plan. But we could hold a special meeting on the 27th or 28th that gives everybody time to have the holiday, and we can get the liquor thing done later this week, and we can have something on the agenda, proclamation, resolution, whatever you desire, and get that approved before the 29th. That my recommendation was to get something in place before the 29th, so that at least everything would kind of be in sync.
Okay.
So, but,
Good with that.
so then I go ahead and ask everybody here is if we can get all this resolution wording done by 3 o'clock tomorrow and get it posted, can y'all go ahead and give the people of Lockport 5 minutes on Saturday at 3 o'clock to go ahead and vote on this?
Well, the nice thing is we can all Zoom, so if
We
you
can
end up-
all Zoom.
Yeah.
I'll be in
I
Wisconsin.
don't know if I would hurry
I
it
will
that
be out of
much.
town,
I
too.
think Sonny can write fast, but I mean, there's a lot more to it in the background that we need to research and make, you know, with the holiday and weekend, and I'd rather not do it that fast, but I mean, we're here, we work for you, so.
I will defer.
I would prefer it next week.
Where do you guys,
At the 26th or the 27th next week, but next week sometime.
well, what do you guys want to do? It's really kind of up to you when you can get
Whatever you
together.
feel comfortable with. I'll go with what you feel comfortable with.
All right, anybody else have an opinion?
Let's get it right, take our time.
Technically, if you're gonna vote on something, it needs to be posted 48 hours. I mean, you have less than 48 hours to even put something together for a Sunday, Monday vote. I don't think anyone wants, some people are traveling for a holiday. I think it'd be good to have a couple days this week to ratify it. We can email you all what we're doing, the feedback we got. We can get it out on the agenda, I guess on Tuesday, or, I guess if we don't get it on the, I guess if we don't do it on Friday, it's not gonna be out publicly necessarily until Tuesday, so you'd have to have the vote on Thursday. But that's still before the governor's, order on the 29th.
Well,
It becomes a moot point.
I think we can, comfortably set it for the 26th or the 27th to vote. So,
Wednesday, we do
yeah,
special meetings on Wednesdays.
Yes, or Wednesday or, yeah.
All right.
It's not gonna take a lot to, well, I guess I'm speaking for myself.
Well, okay, so here's what we do.
Couple days' notice.
Here's what we do. Sonny, the stuff that I can sign and get done as a liquor commissioner,
Yeah.
you can get that, and we can take care of that right away. So that helps the business owners with that. As far as like, the other aspect of it, these are all guidelines anyway. These aren't like mandates. So whether we approve them or don't approve them, they're still just guidelines. So the nuts and bolts aspect of like the things that I can sign, we can do that tomorrow or right away. The rest of this stuff, if it ends up we doing a special meeting 1 week from now on the 27th, then it's, all we're doing is, confirming guidelines anyway for everyone.
But I understand, but then what happens here is we have the opportunity for places to open on Sunday and Monday, and by waiting until Wednesday, they lose that.
They can already do it, Darren. I think I asked Ben to get some, we got 2 different benches coming in. Some are nice, heavy-duty ones. I also told him just run out and get some at Home Depot tonight. That kind of stuff, that can happen tomorrow. It doesn't need our approval to eat outside. You can already do that. So really, most of these other guidelines pertain to, fitness places and these kinds of things, which quite frankly, if they were open now, all I would do is give them, if I got a call for a complaint, I would give them a notification that says, FYI, you're in violation of the governor's phased orders, so that's not going to change anyway.
And if I could address that, regardless of whether we pass the guidelines, a lot of the businesses are going to be grappling with whether or not their insurance carrier is going to cover them for opening up in violation of any executive order. And we do have the disclaimer in the guidelines saying that they are taking it at their own risk, and they need to talk with their insurance carrier, their attorneys. But oftentimes what an insurance coverage policy will state is that if you're in violation of any state, federal, local ordinance, and it could be interpreted as governor's executive order, we will not cover you. So it's, even if we pass the resolution on Sunday and had the guidelines, the businesses are going to have to take the time to say, is it worth the risk of either one, having the, some type of state jurisdiction taking away my license to do my business on the state level? Two, am I going to lose my small business grant that I received from the state that states that I will comply with all state, federal, local ordinances? Or three, if the governor does pass or publish or files an amendment, emergency amendment, similar to what he passed before, am I going to risk other ramifications down the line? So regardless of when we pass the resolution, it is going to be up to the individual business owner on the decision of whether to open it, and that will take longer than just a day or two.
And that really is the bottom line. For us, I've talked to a number of business owners, and they've asked me, about, different levels of opening and when they can do it. And some of them are like, when I tell them, like, here's the warnings, like Sonny said, if the governor's like, said, hey, I'll dangle some kind of state license, or I'll, make other threats. I mean, that's on the governor. As far as it is for us, I'm not gonna tell a business who's in desperation that you can't do what you need to do. Just be safe. I think we're all familiar now with what social distancing is. We're all familiar with wiping things down and keeping things clean. But ultimately, some businesses are like, no problem. I've got other income from other sources. I will, stay closed until whenever, I don't feel those threats coming from Springfield. And others are like, I either got to lose everything or I'm going to give it the last try. So I'm not going to tell anybody not to do what they have to do to, survive. So that's going to happen regardless. So we just, this ultimately are the guidelines. Anybody can read them now, but they'll all be recommendations anyway. Well, in the meantime, I can get those things signed for to help with how the restaurants and liquor are served and that kind of stuff. So why don't we do this? We'll meet Wednesday, do a special meeting. Should take just a couple minutes. By then, we will certainly have anybody's input. Like I said, I want to make sure we do get input and nobody will be rushed.
Can I ask a question with Sonny? I apologize. I just want to make sure we have time to meet on Wednesday. If we're off and closed on Monday, we have to post notice 48 hours in advance. You may not be able to have the special meeting until Thursday. I don't know if one day makes a difference or not. But
Why can't I post it like tomorrow? I mean, if I post that we're going to have a special meeting on Wednesday tomorrow, that's more than 48 hours.
But you have to have the agenda item on there, don't you, Sonny? You have to have it written.
You do, I could draft a resolution.
I guess we'll know by Friday. If she can write it, we can have it prepared and everyone's ready.
I'll be able to do that.
We'll
It's
post
just,
it.
yeah,
If
we'll
it's
post
not
it.
ready and we need more time, then maybe it'll be Thursday, but we can email it.
The Open Meetings Act just requires sufficient information on the agenda to apprise the public of what the public body would be discussing.
Okay.
So we'll put it out
The
there.
title is fine. You don't have to have the whole thing written in whole.
No,
Okay,
and
okay.
it's,
Sorry,
for
I just want to make
special
sure we're
meeting,
doing it right.
it's just one item, or one or two items, and
Yeah, special meeting.
there won't be anything else, so it should be.
Okay.
All right, so
I can do it.
special meeting Wednesday. Sonny, we'll take care of the other things tomorrow. Okay. All right, very good. Why don't we move on to CED1, Fire Sprinkler and Fire Alarm Installation Assistance Grant.
That was removed already.
We removed it?
Did you not say that?
No, what he did was, we
change
moved
the order.
Redwood
Yeah, I let-
up.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to make this extremely brief. This is Tangled Roots. They applied for a fire alarm sprinkler grant. They submitted all the 3 bids, filled out the applications. The district has reviewed the plans, approved the plans, have no issues with the system nor the costs that have been identified. We would certainly recommend approval of Resolution 20056 in the amount of $20,000 for the installation of a fire sprinkler and alarm system shown on the plans.
Everybody good with an action item on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Good? Yep, all right. By the way, they are, I talked to the Tangled Roots owners today, and they are, yep, they're moving forward, building, they want to be open, you know, no stopping there. And the Nick and Ivy Brewery across the street is just put their sign up. So even in spite of all this, you know, people are still building out in downtown Lockport, and very glad for it. All right, next thing is City of Lockport Transportation Plan and Access Criteria, PW1.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. This item is more for informational only. This is just a, we're going to put out a couple of these as a department moving forward. The next one's going to be more related to stormwater, but just some key points that we get asked about a lot, and specifically this technical memo, this is regarding our transportation plan. So this is how we evaluate access points, why we evaluate access points. It talks about spacing, it talks about congestion, talks about safety. So I won't go into all of the details, but this is informational. Next meeting or the following, the next one we will put together is related to stormwater. So,
okay.
If anybody has any questions, I take those now or offline.
All right, what about PW2?
PW-2, this is in relation to well 15. We have to do a water quality corrosivity study. So this is very short and sweet. To the point is that in response to some of the issues that the EPA has had recently in other communities, when a new system comes online, there has to be a lead and copper study. And so what this is ensuring that our new water coming out of well 15, when it's blended, will have no impact to our existing infrastructure. So this evening, I would ask for council's consideration for $39,000 for Strand Associates to conduct the study for the well 15 corrosivity study.
Any questions? Good with consent?
So what?
Okay. All right, if nothing else, then we'll do a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Catherine, seconded by,
Second.
all right, Christina, all in favor? Yes. Joanne, did you have something?
I'm sorry, did I miss something? Did we not go back to the liaison report?
Oh, I'm sorry, if you've got something else, then please, by all means. What do you got?
I apologize. I just wanted to get the word out to our residents that we are going to still continue with the beautification recognition of anyone that takes that extra step and decorate their homes for spring. If we are not able to recognize the residents in person, somehow we will get to you and recognize you in front. Maybe it'll have to be virtual if that's what we're still doing. But we will recognize the people one way or another, even if we have to come to your house and videotape this.
Okay.
So, but we'd like to encourage people to call, to sign up and fill out an application, send in your pictures. You can send in pictures of you and your significant other if both of you are the landscapers in your home. Because we would like to still recognize our residents for the work that they do to beautify their homes, and that helps all of the city look nice.
Okay, all right, very good. Thanks for doing that with all that's going on, Joanne.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
The Lockport Resource Center, the police department, Lockport Love, they collected 60 bikes for the fundraiser for the Lockport Resource Center. So there was quite a few people who helped with that. And those bikes will go on sale from like $10 to $30, and that goes toward the Transformation Scholarship. So pretty soon you should see that online, the online bidding. So it's a good job for all the volunteers who did that. Thank you.
All right, right on. All right, if nothing else, then just need we have our motions to adjourn. Can I get an aye?
Aye.
Yes, all right. Then as soon as you're ready, Kathy, please do a roll call for our city council meeting.
so many Zoom meetings, I actually said aye there.
Oh, the
It doesn't count then.
And I don't count.
Yeah, it's
Not
on their
in the vote.
website, but it's called the Transformation Scholarship
After 10 o'clock. That's my
for all
midnight.
ages.
Have a block somewhere.
All right, looking for a roll call.
Saban. Present. Schreiber.
Here.
Bergbauer.
Here.
Galogly.
Here.
Deskin.
Here.
Lobes.
Here.
Bartleson.
Here.
Coretta.
Here.
Motion, we have a quorum.
All right, very good. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to have a consent agenda this evening.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
I got
I heard
Mark,
Mark
I
and,
got Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
We've got Larry in his giant hand. All right, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from May 6th. Looking for approval for a regular City Council meeting minutes from May 6th. Payroll period ending May 3rd. Special use permit for a contractor shop, outdoor storage, file and development plans for U.S. Tennis Court. It's PZ 2019-015. Also approval for 20-053, which is the final development plans with the parking lot over there on 1300 Canal Street. Ordinance number 20-011, which is amending the chapter 152 Lockport Code of Ordinances on some cleanup and fire district fees. And then we've got Fire and Sprinkler Alarm Installation Assistance Program, Resolution 20051. And then there's the Fire Alarm Assistance Grant Request for 4735 for 704 East 9th Street. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think that was Joanne and Larry.
Renee.
No,
Oh, Renee.
It was Renee.
Sorry.
Renee and Larry.
All right, can I get,
That one.
very good. Can I get a roll call then?
Saban.
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Lobes.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. Okay, looking for approval for bills on May 2nd, or May 12th, 2020. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Mark?
Seconded.
Seconded by Renee. Can I get a roll call, please?
Can I have a question first?
Oh, yeah, of course, sorry.
A question for Lisa. I noticed that we are paying the COVID grants, but they all seem to be described as paying off grants. I just want to confirm that some of those are loans and not all grants.
Yes, thank you, JR. The accounting system we have, when it prints the bills list out, it just shows you the first line. So it doesn't show that there were actually two lines that were entered. But yes, the loans were paid out as well as the grants.
Okay. All right, then can I get a roll call, please?
You got it. Saban.
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Lobes.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, looking for a motion to approve Resolution 20057, which was the appointment of Ed for a new auxiliary police officer.
I'll make that motion.
So moved.
Catherine and Mark. May I have a roll call, please?
Ooh, he's gonna
Saban.
Yes.
Schreiber.
He's gonna speak.
Whoops.
Yes.
Okay, Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Lobes.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
And Peretta.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed.
All right, very good. CA1 is looking for approval for Resolution 20055. It's a shared parking agreement between several of the property owners on State and the City of Lockport, and a separate agreement between City of Lockport and Boss Properties. So, you're looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, it was Mark and Renee. Any questions? Anybody need any further discussion on this? Are we all clear?
Yeah, Mayor, this is just a resolution 20055. It's two agreements with one resolution, one vote. It's the shared parking agreement between all the property owners that will share the parking lot. and Boss Properties, one of the other owners has an agreement as well for the additional parking that's going to be guaranteed for his residents.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, then I can have a roll call, please.
You got it. Saban.
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Lobes.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, CA2, we're looking for a lease agreement with Karen Evans, owner of 1023 South Hamilton, for the use of the westerly half. This is for the parking, this is all part of that same whole parking lot thing. This is resolution 20054. So we're looking for a motion to pass.
So moved.
Mark?
Seconded.
Second by Larry. Does anybody need any further clarification or discussion?
Just resolution 20054, seeking approval for the additional lease agreement with the additional property owner to add more parking into the opportunity for the parking lot.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Oh, I think we already did that. Sorry, looking for a roll call. We already did it. Sorry, my apologies. So a roll call, please.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Was it Mark and Larry?
I think it was, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mark
Sounds
and
good to
Larry.
me.
Thank you. Okay, so Saban.
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Lobes.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, looking for a motion to approve resolution 20051, which is with Christopher Burke to begin the concept study for the interchange at Bruce Road, which ultimately is the connection we're looking for when the Bruce Road Caton Farm Bridge finally happens. This would be the best way to get people onto the highway. Looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Darren and Larry. May I have a roll call, please? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion? Anybody got anything they want to put on there? Okay, may I have a roll call then?
Saban.
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Lobes.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next one is Resolution 20060. This is a change order to the contract with Austin Tyler for Second and Fifth Street water main and roadway reconstruction in the amount of $400,000 for an additional water main replacement. Looking for a motion to approve.
I'll motion.
So moved.
All right, I think it was Mark and Renee.
Okay.
Okay, just quickly, Brent, yeah, if one of y'all can just kind of, just describe the additional water main?
So what this is this is an extension of the existing project. We had a couple streets around 8th Street that, just to the north of City Hall, that were done this year and last year. This year, we had not intended to do anything along Washington, so Washington from 9th to 8th Street was going to be part of next year's project. We've got very positive bids this year. We've got limited traffic going on right now, and we also have a contractor that's out doing the work right in the area, and we were asking this evening to basically take one block of next year's project, which is the one block of Washington from 9th Street to 8th Street, and have that done this year. Again, with the bid prices that we already have, so it would be a change order to the existing contract in the amount of $400,000.
Okay.
So we're clear, this is the road behind City Hall. Our thought was to try to move this portion up from next year so that it's all done around here. So hopefully when everybody's healthy next year, we have all these events at City Hall and car shows are back, that we don't have construction still going on around City Hall. That was the primary focus for the request.
Okay. Any questions?
Is that to add some parking spaces too over there, or is that just?
Yes, we are actually.
Yeah.
On 8th.
Are we actually going around the corner too, up the hill to the parking lot? Or is that something else?
Yeah, so this will take us from basically the northeast corner where there's dentist office. This will take us from that point up the hill, correct, towards 9th Street, all the way in front of the east side parking lot.
Okay, very good. If there's nothing else, then I'll have a roll call, please.
You got it. Saban,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bergbauer,
Yes.
Galogly.
I think I have to abstain because I've been trying to sell the material on this project.
Okay. Deskin,
Yes.
Lobes,
Yes.
Bartleson,
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, then we're looking for a motion to pass Resolution 20063, which is an extension for downtown streetscape project in the amount of $183,622 for additional sidewalk vault and stairwell removal. So looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Catherine? Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, Renee
Who was that?
seconded
I'm sorry, Larry?
it. Is Renee and Larry at the same time?
Renee beat me to it.
All right, Renee.
Got it.
Okay, questions, concerns, thoughts?
Mayor, this is the, we talked about this a few months ago at the council about finalizing basically some additional work outside of the IDOT project from next year. It's 10th and 11th. We've got a couple vaults left, a couple open staircases we want to fill in. This was money that we actually budgeted for some canal road work, but because of IDNR delays, we won't be able to spend it this year. So we have the funds available. We'd like to get ahead of next year's project so that it's complete, and then the 2021 IDOT, the rest of the streetscape project will be done next year, and we're seeking approval.
Okay. All right.
Does that take away most of our vaults then, or do we still have some then?
No, it does. I think it finally gets rid of all of them. Brent, do you know if there's any more? I think that's it.
This takes care of all of the known vaults that we have, correct?
And known is a good question.
Yeah, we'll find 6 more.
We will. All right, friends, can I have a roll call then?
You got it. Saban? Saban?
Yes.
Okay. Schreiber,
Yes.
Bergbauer,
No.
Galogly,
Yes.
Deskin,
Yes.
Lobes,
Yes.
Bartleson,
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, then we got PW1, which is an amendment to the contract with Strand Associates for the 5th through 9th Street water main and roadway reconstruction for some additional design engineering scope, which is a increase of 121.5. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
All right, Darren and Mark, questions, concerns? All right. Yep.
Just would like to very briefly, this is just an addition of some roadway and some water main that initially, when we put the CIP together, was not as in bad a shape, quite honestly, as it is today. We had a large main break last year in the proximity of this project. So essentially what we were going to have was 5th to 9th was going to be done next year, and we were going to be missing the location that we had the large main break on. Large main break was at 6th and Madison. So that's what this project is doing. This is encompassing a main break area and also completing the project all the way out to 9th Street. So we have now a complete system on our north end of town, north end meaning north of 9th Street.
Okay, all right, very good. Can I get a roll call then?
Absolutely. Yes. Saban,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bergbauer,
Yes.
Galogly,
Yes.
Deskin,
Yes.
Lobes,
Yes.
Bartleson,
Yes.
Coretta.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, very good. Look, council, I want to thank you for putting up with a very long meeting. We usually don't have meetings this long, so you really earned your $500 a month with no benefits job. So,
Before taxes, by the way.
before taxes, I know everybody thinks this is like some gold mine job, but it is a service job, and I appreciate you for all the service, and thank you for doing it. Okay, all right, folks. All right.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, then motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, that was a unanimous, and,
Larry and
all-
Renee?
Yeah, Larry and Renee's good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Good night.